Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Students of the Snake in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 66, Revealed. When Subsonic first took off their mask, Sasuke didn't expect them to turn out to be someone he actually knew. If anything, he just thought that this enemy was being stupid in giving away their identity like that. The smart choice would have been to keep their face and name hidden to keep up their anonymity. But once the hood was off, Sasuke started thinking differently. There had to be a reason this masked ninja was so willing to show their face. They had to gain something by doing this, enough to make up for the fact that from now on they couldn't spy easily anymore since Sasuke would be able to identify them. With that in mind, Sasuke now got apprehensive. Subsonic's hood and mask were off, revealing a woman's face with short black hair and a set of brown eyes behind blue glasses. After that, Subsonic removed a vest which allowed her compressed breasts to relax and become more noticeable. The vest was mostly there to hold some supplies and trick people into thinking she was a man. Sasuke's eyes widened as he recognized this person. Mako Ichiba? You're a spy for another village. Yep, I'm a spy. No one would suspect someone as insignificant as a mere eye doctor of being a spy. Luckily that job ensures every ninja in Konoha comes to me in time, especially those with Jujutsu, so I barely even have to look for information. Of course I still do look. Sasuke frowned. So you're the one who told those music note ninja I had a Jujutsu. You set me up to lose my Sharingan. Mako looked nonchalantly. You're only half right. Yes, I did tell the ninja of Oto you have a Sharingan, but you did that too by flaunting your Uchiha name left and right. Ninja don't go bragging about themselves, you idiot. You just make yourself a target that way. And yes, I did ask them to take away your Sharingan, but I had no idea you and they were going to be in wave at the same time. I figured you wouldn't lose it until later on at the future. That was just really good timing. It doesn't matter. My Sharingan's gone and it's your fault. Sasuke said, grabbing a meat cleaver from a drawer. You may find this hard to believe, Sasuke, but I didn't ask that to hurt you. I asked that to happen so it would help you. Help me? How is making me lose my Sharingan helping me? Sasuke shouted, looking like he was 1 minute away from chopping her up like a butcher. Mako smiled. Simple. Now you know what everyone really thinks of you, and now you know not to take your own skills and status for granted anymore. Had you kept your Sharingan, you would have continued to be the council's pampered bitch with delusions that they are on your short leash, rather than you on theirs. Sasuke was still mad, but he settled down. As much as I hate to admit it, she does have a point. Even so, I will never forgive you for doing that. I don't expect you to, Sasuke. In fact, I don't think I even deserve it. Sasuke arched an eyebrow but smugly smiled. At least you acknowledge your crime against me. Mako now looked remorseful and a bit mad. Sasuke, you have no idea what I'm talking about. I did something far worse than give some shinobi the idea to damage your eyes. Something that to this day makes me feel ambivalent. There are days I still regret doing what I did, but other times I feel like I only would have made things worse had I done anything else. The same applies to how I feel about you personally, Sasuke. I don't understand. Just why would you care about me at all if you're my enemy? Sasuke asked. Because I don't want to be your enemy, Sasuke, but at the same time, I can't stand what you've become. What's wrong with you? You're an enemy, plain and simple. That's all we need to know. Mako shook her head. Life isn't as absolute as you think it is, Sasuke. But I guess there's only one way to prove it to you. She then took off her glasses and pulled out a set of brown contact lens in her eyes, showing her pupils were actually black in color. Then she removed her headband used to keep her hair up. Without it, her dark brown hair fell down to her waist. All of a sudden, Sasuke recognized a face he had not seen in a long time except in his memories and photographs. No, it can't be. This is impossible. It's true, Sasuke. Mako Ichiba is just a fake name and identity for me. My true name is Mikoto Uchiha, your mother. You can't be. Itaka killed her just like all the others. Sasuke came close to shouting. He performed a genjutsu release, only to see nothing changed. The now revealed Mikoto sadly shook her head. I almost did die, but Itaka couldn't wound me as well as the others. I'm an expert at dodging Sasuke, nicknamed the Kami no Kawarimi for a reason. What you saw was me faking death to avoid taking any further damage. Itaki had too much to cover to ensure I was truly dead. You can't be my mother, Sasuke said, looking and sounding like he was about to break out in hysterical tears. You would have come for me if you were. I wanted to, at first. But I couldn't. It's a long story as to why. Flashback. Dazed and confused, Mikoto started to regain consciousness. Looks like my false death jutsu is wearing off, and it looks like it was enough to trick Itaki. For all basic purposes, I had no pulse, no breath, no warmth for 2 minutes, a perfect simulation of death. Too bad Sensei was right when she said the after effects always make you feel like shit. Right now she had a headache, cramping muscles, nauseous taste in her mouth, her eyes couldn't focus, and her legs wouldn't respond to her commands. She sort of felt like she had a hangover and slept in a bad position during the night. Hey, over here. We have a live one. Some man's voice called out from above Mikoto. For some reason, I don't like the sound of that, Mikoto thought. She looked up and saw an Umbu agent standing over her, but this Umbu didn't feel normal to her. He was looking at her like she was a prize of some kind. Soon others showed up, and among them was a man with bandages on his face. My, this sure is surprising. I didn't think we'd find a live one tonight, the bandaged man said. What should we do, Danzu-sama? One of the Umbu asked, as if unprepared for encountering any survivors here. Are the others, are they all dead? Fugaku? Sasuke? Oh please Kami no, Mikoto frantically thought. Take her away to the cells. Her eyes should theoretically be the best ones to use here, and if she can still bear children, we can ensure the Uchiha line will stay alive and I'll have prime access to the children. Danzu told the Umbu. Like hell I'm staying here, Mikoto thought, then performed a substitution with a training log to get away. Fortunately for Mikoto, she didn't need a training log near the Uchiha estate to perform the jutsu. She was good enough to get clear across town using one substitution jutsu, and that was exactly where she had gone. Once free, Mikoto sat up and leaned against a tree. Her hands were covering a frontal stab wound she got during the massacre from Itaki, and not the only wound she had right then. My son. Why did you do this? Why? Did your father push you too hard and you snapped? Were you being controlled by someone? Why? Did you really kill everyone? Is my entire family dead because of my son? She sat down and wept. Who were those people there? They talked like they had something planned for the bodies and they didn't expect anyone to still be alive. But my false death jutsu can only last a few minutes, so they showed up just moments after Itaka saw me, so how could they have known about this so quickly? Why were they more interested in taking the bodies than stopping Itaka from making more? She gasped. They were in on it. This wasn't a random slaughter. Someone planned this, to take something from the Uchiha. Hey, you okay? A man's voice called out to her, causing Mikoto to look forward rather than down. In front of her was Jiraiya, looking quite worried. You're bleeding. What happened? I'm not exactly sure myself. Aren't you Jiraiya of the Sunin? Yes I am. That doesn't look good. Without medical attention you could bleed to death in an hour at most I'd say. But I'm not a medic. I can take you to one though. You can't take me to the Konoha hospital. If you do, there's no way I'm going to see the light of day again. Someone wants to harvest my body it sounds like. Jiraiya is surprised, but nodded. I know a place where you can be treated. The problem is, I can't guarantee you can come back here anytime soon. My family's dead. What do I have to come back to? Mikoto sobbed. Alright then. Jiraiya then summoned a transportation toad. We need to get to Tsunade right away. The toad got larger and swallowed Jiraiya and Mikoto, then poofed away and reappeared in Oto. The next day, Mikoto was in Oto's hospital. Tsunade had treated her open wounds and kept her from excessive bleeding and internal bleeding as well, and did some repair on the damaged organs. It looked like Itaki had used a sword to cut through her right kidney and nick her liver, Not immediately threatening wounds, but definitely not something that Mikoto could have shrugged off, and he appeared to have done some sort of damage to her spine in a second wound that Tsunade was having difficulty with. Mikoto woke up in the morning but saw little reason to be awake and alive. Everyone she knew was dead, so why go on? Her answer came to her really soon. Orochimaru came into the room as she ate breakfast. "Mikoto-san? It is you." "Orochimaru-sama?" Mikoto asked. "So this is where you've been all these years?" "I probably should have guessed since Jiraiya-sama brought me here and Tsunade-sama treated me." The snake Sunin nodded. "Yes. This is my new home, Otagakure. The world's only true hidden village for the time being. I guess now's as good a time as any to give you my report on what's going on in Konoha he?" Mikoto asked with a light smile, as if she was joking. "That can wait until you're better. You've done so much for me and Naruto, the least I can do is let you recover first." Orochimaru told her. Out of all the people in Konoha who had been against Naruto in his brief time there, Mikoto was never one of them. She knew Kushina was due to give birth, was with Minato, and had chosen the name Naruto for her son. So when a baby with blonde hair named Naruto Uzumaki appeared the day of the Kyuubi attack, Mikoto would have to be too stupid to dress herself to not realize who he was. She would have gladly taken in Naruto if not for two reasons. One being that Fugaku absolutely refused to even think of the idea for reasons he never explained other than no non-Uchiha should have their privileges. And the other being that Mikoto had been out of town for a while trying to find Kushina's body and something she left behind for Naruto the days following his birth, and Orochimaru beat her to having custody. She didn't find Kushina, but she found the something and kept a hold of it in secret so she could give it to Naruto when he was old enough to use it properly. So even though she was unable to raise the boy, she did help Orochimaru in caring for Naruto and even Anko when she was needed. Until he had to leave Konoha, to which she couldn't join as she still needed to care for Sasuke. So she volunteered to stay behind and warn Orochimaru of any possible threats coming from Konoha by sending him messenger birds or informing Jiraiya. This was their first direct meeting in 4 years. "Thank you, Orochimaru-sama, but as long as you're here and it's fresh in my memory, I might as well tell you what I know," Mikoto claimed. Orochimaru sat down on a chair beside the bed. "If you insist. The last thing I remember was having a peaceful night at home when all of a sudden my oldest son Itaka came home and tried to fight my husband. He didn't move like this was some random surprise fight or even a drill, he acted like he honestly wanted his father dead. Fugaku fought back and I think the two exchanged words, but I can't remember anything they might have said. I tried to interfere but Itaka moved like I was going to receive no more mercy than Fugaku was going to. This is suspicious," Orochimaru commented. Mikoto nodded then continued. "He almost pierced my neck but I substituted with a log to get away and ran to find some help. To my horror, the streets were littered with bloody dead bodies. All of them, cut or pierced by a sword." She paused briefly, tearing up at the memory. "I lost track of time, but Itaka caught up to me again. I tried to run, to keep Sasuke from getting hurt or even seeing any of this. Itaka used weapons and jutsus on me, and I kept substituting to get out of harm's way, but he did manage to get me once. Before he could do more, I used the false death jutsu to trick him into thinking I was dead, and I think it fooled him enough to have him pass me over." "How tragic for you, Mikoto-san," the snake Sunin sympathetically said. "And if that wasn't bad enough, when I recovered there were men in uniform collecting the dead bodies. I know for a fact I couldn't have been out for a long time, so I have big suspicions about them. It was like they knew Itaka was going to do this, and instead of stopping him, they wanted to harvest the Uchiha bodies for something. I know this because when they saw I was still alive, one of them talked like they wanted to cover it up, like there weren't supposed to be any survivors. But as long as I was alive they'd keep me hidden and turn me into a breeder like Kumo is rumored to do." Orochimaru looked uncomfortable. "After learning what I have from Konoha, I find this very easy to believe, Mikoto-san. Is it possible that the Sandaime ordered your son to kill off your entire clan? Years ago when he learned about all of Sarutobi's shady dealings in Konoha, the idea that he could do this was not far-fetched to Orochimaru. I don't know how he could have made Itaka do such a thing, but I know my son, and I know he would never do such a horrific thing voluntarily," Mikoto answered. Itachi was like me, one of those rare types of people who became a ninja not for the glory or power or the privileges. He wanted to protect what he valued, thinking if getting his hands dirty was the price then so be it. There's no way he'd decide to commit murder on a mere whim. So obviously something pushed him in that direction. The question is what and why? The Snake Sunin replied. Mikoto nodded. Yes, but for the life of me I have no idea what that is. Don't worry about it for now. Rest and heal yourself, Mikoto-san, and I'll have Jiraiya see what he can find out without looking suspicious. Orochimaru told the Uchiha matriarch. Mikoto nodded, her eyelids getting heavy and she fell asleep a moment later. End flashback. Sasuke didn't know what to say. So that's how you ended up in another village. Mikoto nodded. How long until you came back? I needed some time to recover. Not a lot, since the greatest medic in the world was there to treat me, but I had no motive to leave. Until I learned of you, that is. But unfortunately, coming back here was not easy. Mikoto answered. Flashback. Mikoto had been in Oto for a month now, staying in the Otokage Tower and keeping an eye on the children who lived there. Taking care of Naruto and the others helped fill the void created by the death of her family. It also gave her something to think about besides the lack of mobility in her legs. Apparently the wound to her spine had resulted in paralysis in her legs, and Tsunade's medic jutsu couldn't repair nerve damage right away. That required repeated treatments. Mikoto wouldn't be able to walk for quite a while. Right now the Uchiha woman was in a wheelchair watching Naruto try some taijutsu moves with Hinata and Isaribi while Anko and Kurane showed them what to do. She smiled to see Kushina's son so happy and well, unlike how he was in Konoha. Kushina-chan, you'd be happy to see your son having a good life here, and probably destroy Konoha for not accepting him. Why couldn't they? Was it really so hard to have faith in Minato's work? Why is it everyone praises him for destroying an entire army yet they can't have faith that his seals work? Don't they realize his Hiration, the jutsu he beat the army with, requires seals he designed to be done? If Naruto's seal was faulty then the Hiration wouldn't even exist. Their hate and mistrust doesn't make sense. It's as if they can't trust the seal. But why? Jiraiya walked up to Mikoto and caught her attention. Hey Mikoto, I've got news you'll want to hear. But you better come with me to Tsunadeheim and Orochimaru to hear it. It's pretty important. Okay, take me there. Mikoto told the Toad Sunin. Jiraiya pushed Mikoto's wheelchair to the Oto Council meeting room, where only the other two Sunin were seated, no one else. Ah, Mikoto-san, glad you could make it. This applies to you more than anyone else. Orochimaru stated. Mikoto looked curious, but stayed silent. Whatever they were going to tell her didn't need to be asked for apparently. Tsunade spoke first. Mikoto Uchiha, judging from what Jiraiya had gathered, we have good news and bad news for you. The good news is one of your family members survived what is now known in Konoha as the Uchiha Massacre. Mikoto perked up, shocked. What? Who? Your son, Sasuke. Jiraiya told her, taking a seat. Sasuke? My baby's alive. Mikoto was crying tears of relief. Oh thank Kami. Wait, what's the bad news? After hearing what you told me about what someone in Konoha had planned for your fate, I immediately worried your son would suffer the same way. However, apparently he hasn't. I'm not sure why, but your son does not to be in danger from anyone in Konoha. Jiraiya explained. Mikoto looked confused. How is that bad news? I'm getting to that. Jiraiya reassured. When I heard that Sasuke was not being kept hidden away by someone, but allowed to be out in the public with the populace allowed to know about him being alive, I was immediately suspicious. No one's made a move to take him out of the public's eyes, but I have a strong feeling someone in Konoha has plans for him. Tsunade nodded. It's like what Sensei did with Naruto. He covered up everything important so no one would have any interest in him. The problem is this time he's not doing that. The Sandaime is making no efforts to keep your son out of the public's eyes. The way we see it, any enemies the Uchiha have would love to know that right now as far as they know there's only one left and he's defenseless. Naturally, Konoha should hide Sasuke to avoid putting him in danger, but they're not. They want everyone to know they have only one Uchiha left. Jiraiya frowned. Sensei hid Naruto's heritage and status from him and Konoha, claiming he was keeping Naruto safe from any vengeful enemies. The fact is, Minato and Kushina were not the only ones in Konoha who acquired enemies, even though Sensei lied about IWA to exaggerate the danger. When you consider this, you would think Sensei would cover up Sasuke too, saying it's for his own good and Konoha's safety. But, they're not. Mikoto nodded. So someone obviously wants to take advantage of my son in a way that will only work if he's not in hiding, even if it means putting him in danger. The Sunin nodded too. That's our thoughts exactly. The question is to what purpose? Orochimaru spoke up. I'll try to find out, but with my methods I can only find out so much. Jiraiya stated. Let me help. Mikoto said, making the Sunin curious. As soon as I can move on my own again, let me get a direct look. Jiraiya-sama can't be there all the time, and can't go looking for information on Konoha without looking suspicious, but I can. Orochimaru shook his head. Mikoto-san, you can't. If you show Konoha you survived, whoever tried to assault you that night will make an effort to do so again, or at least discredit you enough to keep you away from your son or the public. They'll ask, where have you been all this time and how did you survive? If the TNI department get a hold of you, then this village will be revealed before we're ready for that. And from there, it would be easy to keep you locked up forever while they continue to do who knows what with your son. Mikoto hung her head. There must be something I can do. Orochimaru thought it over. I think I know a way you can be a set of eyes and ears for us and stay out of trouble, Mikoto-san. Everyone else looked at the Snake Sunin, who grinned like he had a great idea. If people knew who you were, then only problems will await you. However, if no one knows who you are, then things will be safer for you. Tsunade blinked as she thought it over. You mean, create an identity for her and plant her in Konoha? Orochimaru nodded. That could work, but I see two flaws. How do you get her there without raising suspicions, and how would she be able to send us information? Orochimaru turned to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, if you were go up to Sensei with a homeless civilian who can work that you're familiar with on your travels, would he turn her away? The Toad Sunin thought it over. I don't think so, but it will take some convincing. He then turned to Mikoto. Would you be able to handle that? Living under an alias and unable to do ninja work, but also unable to tell your son who you are? Even trying to gain legal guardianship over him will be out of the question, at least for a year or so. Any sooner will look like you have an agenda and you don't want that. Mikoto didn't know what to say. I won't be able to tell my baby his mother's right there with him? He has to think I'm dead? Why? Even if it's for my own good, can I do it? See him but not tell him? Act like a stranger around him. After a moment she cleared her throat. Is there really no other way? Tsunade shook her head. I don't think so, Mikoto. I know it hurts, but think about it. At least this way you can see him and interact with him even if not as family, but if you don't you'll never get to be with him again. Going back as yourself will go make things worse. But going back as someone else, and you may have a chance to get close to him and later adopt him. If things work out, that is, I can't guarantee that will happen. Mikoto sighed. Even so, it's my only chance, isn't it? The Sunin nodded. Very well. I will go back to Konoha under a fake name and keep an eye on my son that way, as well as find out things for you about Konoha that Jiraiya-sama may not have access to. As for how I can send it to you, I know a way. If I place a long line of logs and rock in a straight line between the villages, I can use the substitution technique to get from point A to point B and back all within a night if I have to. You can do that? Tsunade asked. Mikoto nodded. I'm the Kami no Kawarimi. I can substitute with many things very quickly and I have a larger range of usage than anyone else. I can cover miles in a flash thanks to one substitution, so I can cover the trip between the villages in an hour or so if I have to. The only reason I didn't get to the other side of the village away from Itaki right away that night was I didn't want him to follow me and get more people involved. But I could have if I wanted to. Orochimaru was impressed. That would help out quite a bit. A fast-moving ninja who can hide under the radar, so to speak. Our unseen Oto agent. Mikoto Uchiha, do you accept your responsibility? Before Mikoto could answer, Tsunade spoke up. Hold on, Orochimaru, she needs to recover first, and it could take up to a year to get her nerves reconnected and for her to handle the physical therapy to be as mobile as before. Mikoto slammed her open palm on the table, effectively catching everyone's attention. 6 months. I'll be ready in 6 months. I've got a son to get back to, I can't wait a year for that. Orochimaru smiled. True to her word, Mikoto finished her treatments and recovery in 6 months. 6 months and 8 days to be exact. Everyone was amazed. Tsunade had finished her medical work about 3 months after Mikoto arrived in Oto, meaning 4 months of treatments total. After that, Mikoto regained the ability to use her legs, but had to learn to stand on her own again and get coordinated again when moving. Not only that, she needed to be used to performing jutsu again. But her desire to be near her son again motivated Mikoto like nothing else could have. So now, Mikoto stood on her own in front of Orochimaru, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and the entire Shinobi Council of Oto. Orochimaru stood as the most prominent person there. Mikoto Uchiha, you have surpassed our expectations and regained your ability to serve our village as desired faster than expected. That shows us you will be a great asset to our village. Will you serve us? Mikoto nodded. I will. Konoha has proven to be a threat to me and my family, and while I cannot act yet, I will find out the depths of this threat and ensure it will not spread to Otogakure. I owe my life to the Sunin, and I will do as they ask to the best of my abilities, as a kunoichi of Oto. Orochimaru smiled. I'd give you an Oto Hitaiate, but where you are going that will only get you in trouble. Then he looked serious. Mikoto-san, your mission is to disguise yourself as a civilian and allow Jiraiya to take you to Konoha. Once there you will assume a civilian's lifestyle and work, but keep a watchful eye and ear out for anything that can be of use to us. You have my permission to investigate the matter with the Uchiha as you wish, as long as it does not interfere with your other duties and does not put you at risk. At least once every 2 weeks, report back to us at your convenience. Do you understand? I do, Otokage-sama. Orochimaru and the others looked pleased. Very well. Have you chosen an acceptable alias? Mikoto nodded. Yes. Mako Ichiba, based on an old nickname of mine that hasn't been used in years. With that in a simple non-genjutsu disguise, I will handle my role with ease. I also learned how to be an eye doctor from my mother, so with Jiraiya-sama's help, I should have no problem landing a job as an unassuming optometrist. Someone every ninja will eventually come to and chat with. Orochimaru and the others nodded. Excellent. From now on, you will no longer be known as Mikoto Uchiha, until further notice. In Konoha, you will be Mako Ichiba. In Oto, your identity will be hidden to keep any spies in here from finding you. Here, you will be our secret weapon. Fast, unseen, unheard, unnoticeable. Your title will reflect that. You are Subsonic. End flashback. And even you should know the rest, Sasuke. Mikoto finished to her stunned son. I came back, got a job, got a home, and got to see you around town all the time. It would have been great, until I found out that during the 7 months I was gone you went from being a sweet boy to a rotten spoiled brat. No wonder Jiraiya-sama didn't tell me what you were like during my recovery. Had I known, I would have given up. Sasuke was barely able to comprehend all this. Itachi had been unable to kill his mother. Someone knew about the massacre beforehand and seeked to profit from it. The legendary Sunin had turned traitor to Konoha and were in charge of the music note ninja. His mother had been in Konoha for years but couldn't expose herself even to him to keep them both out of danger. This can't be true. Sasuke said. Can it? It is, Sasuke. Mikoto reassured him. Don't you remember how in my first year here I was always nice to you? Gave you treats? Offered to keep you company. Everyone did that. And they also tried pushing their daughters onto me too. Mikoto sadly nodded. I remember. I also remember how you treated me when I was being nice. Nothing I did was good enough for you and you never wanted to talk to me unless I was kissing your ass. It hurt, but I thought you were just upset from the tragedy. It was worse when I saw you on your 9th birthday. Remember that? Sasuke tried to think back. No, I don't. I'm not surprised. Mikoto said, sounding mournful. I got you some of your favorite candy as a kid, hoping it would make you think of your mother and feel less alone. But when you got it, you... Now she looked somewhat angry, shedding tears. You actually had the gall to tell me it was the most worthless gift you ever got. You actually told me the wrapping paper was worth more to you than the gift was. You said my gift wasn't going to help you kill your brother and it was an insult to your clan to give you an inexpensive useless gift. It was. Sasuke said before he could stop himself. Mikoto still looked mad. A heartfelt gift was an insult? Sasuke, I never thought I could love and hate you at the same time. Now Sasuke looked hurt. What? You're my son and I love you. I've never stopped. But at the same time, I hate what you've become. I know you can become a good person again, the kind of boy others can be proud of, but as long as you continue to believe that you're the only one who matters, you're just going to keep making me sick. Sasuke gasped in disbelief. What? Mikoto crossed. Even when you thought I was dead, did you think I would approve of your behavior? But I'm just trying to avenge everyone. That's important to us. Sasuke argued. Mikoto leaned closer, her glare started to make Sasuke panic a bit. No, it's important to you. I don't like what Itachi did either, but I've at least made my peace with it. You however refuse to, and until you try, if you ever do kill Itachi, you'll just feel hollow because then you'll have nothing else to look forward to in life unless you decide someone else needs to be killed. I mean, seriously Sasuke, have you ever thought about what you're going to do after you kill your brother? I'll rebuild my clan and bring it back to glory again, without any council members using me. The young man answered. Mikoto scoffed. And how are you going to do that? You've already alienated every girl in your age group, even your most devoted one. You think you just have to act nice after Itachi is gone and they'll forget you called them worthless brainless bitches who are only there to make things easier for you? Girls don't forget those kind of things so easily Sasuke, and they don't forgive on command no matter what your status may be. You've basically lost any chance to rebuild your clan since you've made it clear you don't care about anyone but yourself. Now Sasuke got a little mad. You're telling me to forget about what happened to my clan? You dare call me heartless, while this whole time you don't care about what happened to us nor tell me you were alive this whole time. What gives you the right to pass judgment on me? Mikoto crossed her arms, still looking stern and in charge here. Once again you are only seeing this in a way that affects just you. You're not even asking how am I affected, nope, just yourself. I told you I don't like what Itachi did, and I've been miserable not being able to tell you who I really am. But if you really want to know why I decided what I did, you've got to stop thinking about yourself for a moment. Sasuke frowned but he did look less offended. Nonetheless he tried to reassert himself by crossing his own arms. Fine. Explain yourself. Frowning, Mikoto jabbed Sasuke right on the forehead with her fingers exactly like Itachi used to. The gesture made Sasuke lose his composure. You've got a lot of nerve son. Here I am trying to make you see reason, and you just talked to me like I'm your subordinate? Maybe I'm to blame for not raising you these past few years, I can admit that, but you're clearly not ready to face the truth. Even when it's right in front of you. She then turned away and stepped away from him, as if heading for the window. Where are you going? Mom? He asked, calling her mom quietly, as if he was afraid to. Mikoto stopped but didn't face him. Out. I still have a job to do here. Talking to you and trying to get you to open your eyes was just part of it. Apparently you need a little more time before you can accept the truth I told you. After this, I'm going back to Oto, to stay. I can't keep spying now that my identity has been compromised. Sasuke silently gasped. His mother was leaving him. Please don't. If you love me, you can't leave me. Mikoto glanced at Sasuke with only the right side of her face seen by him. Sasuke, I've never stopped loving you. That doesn't mean I like you as you are though. You need to let a few things sink in before I can like you again. Now she faced him directly again, but she still looked ready to leave at any second. I'm going to come back in about a month. If you can prove to me at that point that you can be a good boy again, then I'll do something for you. If you can't, then the next time you see me, we're enemies. Sasuke silently gasped again. What do I have to do? Make the right decision when the council makes a move on you in a week or two. Sasuke was confused. What do you mean? You'll find out when the time comes. Mikoto told him, as if she didn't want to be too specific. All I will tell you, Sasuke, is soon you will be in a situation where you will have to make a choice. When you choose, I will know. If you choose to be greedy and self-interested, then I will have nothing more to do with you. If you choose to be humble and unbribed, then I will offer you the chance to truly be happy. Sasuke looked hopeful. You'll help me kill Itachi? Mikoto shook her head. No matter what, I will not help one of my sons kill the other. My way of helping you is a secret. Can't you tell me? Sasuke asked. Mikoto shook her head again. Not until I know what you really want in life. And I'll find out before the month is over. For now, there's nothing more for me to say. I hope to see you again, son, but if you tell anyone about me or what I told you, you never will again. Before Sasuke could ask anything more or try to stop here, Mikoto disappeared, replaced with a piece of debris from somewhere outside, leaving Sasuke alone until his teammates came knocking at his door. Chapter 67, Invasion 3. Sarutobi was a smart man, despite whatever his students would say about him this day. He wasn't called the professor for nothing. He knew his students were not winging this battle nor this assault on Konoha. They had a plan, and they had contingencies for setbacks and obstacles to their success. Just like how he had strategies for if his beloved Konoha ever was invaded during his second reign. But seeing an old man in a wheelchair brought into the fight by the Yondaime Kazekage had a way of throwing him off. What the heck is going on? Am I missing something? Inma asked, voicing his summoner's confusion. I don't know, old friend, but my gut tells me asking them won't get us any answers. Sarutobi replied. Any last words, Satoru-san? Kazekage asked. Tell him not to regret what was done for him. The old man answered with the calmness of one who accepted the inevitable and embraced it rather than continued to fight it. Will do. Orochimaru said before taking out a sutra and placing it on the man's back and casting a set of 20 rapid hand signs. Edo Tensei Soul Exchange. Around the old man something that looked like a coffin formed. On the lid was the kanji for death, but it started to glow. Sarutobi felt a chill go down his spine. Whatever he's doing, I don't think I want him to succeed. With the others still occupied fighting his giant stone gorilla, Sarutobi rushed towards his pale student. He was blocked by the Kazekage. Now, I can't have you interfere and make one of my men's sacrifice meaningless, can I? You want him, you're going to have to get through me first. Hokage vs Kazekage. Place your bets. Orochimaru joked. One Hyuga was aiming right for Hinata's heart. Before he could make a hit, a small orange blur appeared and bit onto his arm, causing him to retract his arm before any hit could be made. Sango. Perfect timing, as usual. Naruto said, happy to see his snake friend. She couldn't respond as her mouth was full at the moment. One of the other Hyugas tried to attack the snake and Naruto came to aid her. Go start beckon from the grave jutsu. He said after performing 5 hand signs, then slamming his palms on the ground. The ground under them turned dark like upturned soil, and from out of it emerged multiple ghostly arms. These arms grabbed onto all the Hyugas rather tightly, then started to pull them down. The Hyuga watched in horror as their feet started sinking into the darkened ground. Niji reacted by hitting the arms with the Jukin, which destroyed the arms but only briefly. A destroyed one always reformed and grabbed another available spot. What the hell is going on? Hisashi asked when his ankles sank completely into the ground. Sango let go of her victim and slithered over to Naruto, perching on his left shoulder. Are these the ones you warned me we might have to face someday? The very same. Got any ideas? Sango asked. Naruto shook his head. Not many. But since when do I need one to fight? Jiraiya ran up and surprised one Hyuga with a kick to his head. The only reason the Hyuga didn't defend himself was because he assumed the Toad Sannin was on his side here. Jiraiya-sama? What are you doing? A different Hyuga asked. My duty here, taking down Konoha. You betrayed us. Hisashi asked. Chronologically speaking, Konoha betrayed me first, but I owe you no explanations. He then created a Rasengan and thrust it into an attacking Niji's stomach. It wouldn't kill him, but it would certainly leave a mark for quite a while. Not to mention the collision threw Niji a few meters back and made him hit the railing of the arena banisters head first before he fell over it and down into the arena itself. Oh, I don't care what clan you're from, that's gotta hurt. Naruto commented. Isaribi smiled and nodded. Jiraiya jumped and landed beside Naruto. No time for joking, Naruto. We need you now. It's time for our ploy to destroy Konoha's spirit. Naruto nodded. Got it, Eroji-san. Be safe without me, girls. We will. Hinata and Isaribi said to their man before he and his snake friend disappeared with Jiraiya leaving only a log in their place. And how exactly do you two girls plan to get out of here alive? A Hyuga asked. Hinata and Isaribi got into their stances and activated the first stage of their curse marks. Hinata was covered in several lines made of connecting tear-shaped marks and Isaribi's marks looked more like a river current. See for yourself. Hinata said. Damn Kurane, don't you die on me. What am I going to tell your boyfriend if you do? Who's going to be my buddy with you gone? Anko said, trying to avoid crying as she treated her ailing friend. I'm sorry, Anko, I guess I was being selfish. Kurane stated weakly yet sarcastically. Anko looked around and saw she now was surrounded. Around her and her friend were 4 genin, Shikamaru, Ino, Chuji, and Tenten, while the adult ninja were busy dealing with the snakes Anko summoned including Kajiyaku. You kids got a death wish? It's 4 against 1 here. Ino said, not counting Kurane since she was out. Then go grab 4 more and it will be a fair fight. Anko replied, not sounding like she was joking. Tenten threw 8 kunao at Anko all at once. Using one of her own, Anko deflected and blocked 6 of them. The 2 she missed hit her snakeskin armor resulting in no damage at all. Out of the corner of her eye she saw Shikamaru ready his shadow and Ino ready her mind transfer while she was distracted. Smiling, Anko activated her curse mark, gaining snake-shaped streaks all over her skin. Attack me, I dare you. Shikamaru hesitated, unnerved by this strange display, though he did remain ready to retaliate if he needed to. Tenten acted similarly by not throwing more weapons but keep some at hand ready at a moment's notice. Ino on the other hand, mind transfer jutsu. Anko smiled and allowed the attack to hit her, immediately making Shikamaru wary. But as soon as Ino was in there, screaming was heard and it looked like Anko was grabbing her own head. Ack. It hurts. It hurts. All of a sudden Anko stopped and Ino's body returned to consciousness. Chuji was immediately at her side. What happened? Her chakra. It's unnatural. Evil. The Yamanaka heiress aide herself say. You're a monster. She then told Anko. The snake summoner smirked. Oh, you want to see a real monster? How about this? Now she was activating her second stage. Kakashi thrust a kunao into the neck of an Oto shinobi killing him. There, it looks like things have calmed down a bit. I better go check up on my students. Hey guy, I'm done here. Think you can dash? He stopped when he saw the green-clad Jounin wasn't there anymore. Where did he go? Oh well, I better get going too. He headed towards outside the arena, but stopped when an approaching shadow formed around him. He jumped to his right, narrowly avoiding what looked like a large white drill that would have otherwise skewered him like a spear. 2 ninja wearing Oto symbols then landed at his left and right. The one on his right was the imposter Otokage, dressed in a black outfit with a green vest and sporting a faceplate eerily similar to what Tobirama wore but with Oto's symbol rather than Konoha's. The one to his left had pale skin and white hair, and wore loose purple pants and a loose open white shirt, sporting an Oto Hitaiate on his forehead. Kakashi Hatake, we've heard about you. You will find this to be a rather difficult fight. The white-haired one stated calmly. Well, it's not fair that you two know me but I don't know you. Kakashi calmly said, almost sounding bored. Yet he was still on his guard, he only wanted to sound foolish to lower their likelihood of taking him serious right away. We're ninja. We don't do things fair. But if you must know, I am Yamato Tenzu. And I am Kimimaro Kagaya. Kagaya? That name feels familiar. Where have I heard it before? Kakashi asked himself. If you wish to avoid an unnecessary fight, answer one question. Where is Danzu Shimura? He's the one we're ordered to find. Kimimaro asked. Kakashi shrugged. I can honestly say I haven't a clue, but I do know that I shouldn't allow you the chance to find out. So be it. Kimimaro held out his hand, all his fingers pointed at Kakashi. Digital shrapnel. Holes appeared at the end of his fingers and small white projectiles shot out rapidly. Without his Sharingan, Kakashi's reflexes no longer were what he made them to be. He could no longer see each individual projectile and know when and how to avoid them. He spent most of the past month training himself to be coordinated without an active Sharingan again. This is why he was able to avoid a lethal hit even though two of Kimimiro's attacks hit him. Did he just shoot his finger bones out of his hand? Kakashi asked himself. That's it. The Kagaya were that bone-wielding clan from Kiri, rumored to be the one who started the anti-bloodline behavior in Kiri. What's one of them doing here? Dance of the Camellia. Kimimaro then sprouted a bone spike from his upper arm that he pulled right out of his body then held in his hand. This bone looked just like a hiltless sword. Wood-style four-pillar prison jutsu. Yamato said behind Kakashi, catching the former Umbu's attention. Wood-style? That's impossible. Yet the sight of a wooden cage forming around him proved otherwise. What the hell kind of village do you people come from? The sound work best in silence. Kimimaro told him. That Kunoichi I faced in Wave said the same thing. Say what you want about this people, they understand the importance of deception. Kakashi thought while he was also trying to think up a way out of this. Kimimaro approached him swiftly hoping to impale this in a painful spot. Kakashi had little room to dodge, but Kimimaro did not expect him to just stand there and take it. Nope, the Konoha-nin would try and defend himself, and Kimimaro wanted to see how. It would be alright as long as Yamato was there to provide backup. Fire-style Grand Fireball Jutsu. Kakashi said before creating a gigantic fireball that both burned his wooden prison and moved toward his enemy. Exoskeletal armor. The white-haired Otonin suddenly grew bone plates all over him, deflecting the fire attack and leaving him unharmed. Wood-style chakra binding roots. Yamato said in an effort to keep Kakashi unable to do much more. Large tree roots burst out of the ground surrounding the former Cyclops. Raikiri. Kakashi declared, creating his electric attack. Using it he slashed the approaching wooden limbs, keeping them off him completely. He had to stop when he felt something hit the back of his right shoulder. He turned and saw it was Kimimiro's bone sword. Damn, I fight one and leave myself open to the other. I need to take them both down at once. But how? Inoichi was inside Gaara's mind. What he expected to see was an empty white void where he could either take control of the boy or search for memories. What he saw was a vast desert with a gigantic pyramid in the center of it. On the side of the pyramid was the kanji for one and a closed door. But it wasn't a stone door like one would expect on a pyramid, but rather it was a barred door better suited for a prison cell. Bad move coming here Konoha ninja. Gaara's voice said from behind the Yamanaka head, who turned around to face the young sand wielder. How can he be here? In all my experience I've never seen the consciousness of my target actually appear before me when I was in their mind. Inoichi immediately got ready to fight. This may be your mind, but that just makes you all the more vulnerable to my methods. But can you handle two opponents? Gaara said, pointing to the pyramid. Inoichi looked back and saw something that made him sweat in panic. Behind the barred door he could see a giant eye, a yellow one with a cross-shaped black slit pupil and 4 black dots between the 4 points of the slits. And if that wasn't bad enough, he could practically taste the killing intent coming out of the pyramid. What the hell is that? Say hello to my little friend. Gaara joked. Inoichi felt the sand underneath his feet start to move, pulling him towards the pyramid door. Oh hell no. He jumped away, getting away from the sand pole. Sand shuriken. Gaara said, throwing 3 sand discs at Inoichi. The first one struck but he avoided the other 2. I've heard of your type of ninja Konoha-san. You place yourself in the mind of your target to gather information or use their body. But it works best when the target is unaware or weak-willed. Too bad for you I was neither when you attacked. And to make matters worse, my consciousness isn't the only one here, so taking me over is practically impossible for you. Gaara threw some more sand weapons at Inoichi, who worked at dodging. While he dodged, he had to keep moving away from the pyramid the sand current was pulling him towards. Damn it, I'm in a tough spot here. If I focus on the kid I'm vulnerable to the thing in the pyramid. But whenever I get away from it that gives the kid a better chance to hit me. What do I do? I can either get out of here or... Getting an idea, Inoichi ran towards the pyramid and jumped, landing on the side of the stone building. There. I'm away from the sand and the kid so I can prepare a proper jutsu. Gaara smiled. You really think you're safe there? Take a better look. Inoichi saw that several of the bricks on the pyramid walls were actually replaced with small barred opening, resembling gutter vents. From out of them brewed tendrils of sand that quickly looked like clawed hands, each having blue markings running along them and black tips at the end of each claw. What the heck is in here? Inoichi almost screamed, trying to fend off the multiple appendages. Shikaka the Sand Spirit, aka the Ichibai no Tanuki. Gaara calmly answered with a victorious smile. This kid's a Jinhiriki? This is out of my league. Inoichi thought before ending his jutsu and leaving the mindscape. There. That should stabilize you for the time being. Kabuto told his ailing student. I don't have time for more, so we need to get you out of here for now. Thanks sensei. Zuko said, feeling better but still woozy. Sensei. Kin called. I don't think doing that is going to be easy right now. Kabuto looked at his student and saw Guy standing before Kin and Dosa. I'd hate to have to crush such youthful spirits and growing potential, but I do have a job to do. Pity it had to come to this. Kabuto stepped forward. Guys, let me handle this one. You two get Zuko out of harm's way. Got it sensei. Kin said before she and Dosa went to assist their downed teammate. Kabuto eyed Guy, who made no move to intervene. Not going to bother them. I completely understand your desire to protect your students. Besides, I don't exactly like fighting kids if I can avoid it. I hope you have no qualms about fighting me. The bespectacled medic said as he created a chakra scalpel on each hand then charged in. Guy dodged so quickly even Kabuto couldn't see him move. Indeed. He then landed a kick on him from behind, a kick strong enough to send Kabuto flying off the rooftop and over the neighboring building before landing on the ground. Damn, that hurt. I think he cracked a vertebrae at least and maybe even bruised an organ. Before Kabuto could get back up, Guy reappeared in front of him. Are you finished already? Guy asked. Kabuto swiftly got back on his feet, though his back hurt when he landed. Not even close. How are you even able to stand up? Usually when I land a hit of that caliber without any training weights on in a location such as that my target can barely even breathe. Guy said. As soon as the invasion became apparent he had removed his own weights, allowing him to move at his max. I'm a good healer. Kabuto replied. Ever since that sick experiment I was forced to be in before I left this village with Orochimaru-sama, I've had healing abilities on par with a Jinhiriki. My only concern is if this guy can damage me better or faster than I can recover. Guy popped his knuckles. Good. Then let us continue. But before he could make a move, a large amount of senbon hit him from behind and to his right, striking him in many points on his back. Within seconds he fell face first and made no further moves. Kabuto was honestly surprised. What the dash? The next thing he knew was a repeated attack at him that hit him too. After that, he fell on his back and saw only black. What the hell is that? Fu smirked. Your worst nightmare. Times 7. Her chakra took on no shape, but the dangerous intent behind it was sensible to everyone there. The Hyuga Umbu was the first to make a move towards her. Fu smirked and performed 2 hand seals. Ninja art, hidden in scale powder jutsu. She then exhaled a large cloud of fine powder that quickly expanded, keeping all the Umbu's attention on her. Haku and Sasami covered their eyes right away, though Haku then make a few one-handed hand signs. In the bright daylight with little shade in the alley, the sunlight bounced off the fine powder and reflect enough light to rival the sun. Each Anub blocked their eyes as best they could, but the Hyuga was the worst off. The bright blinding light was coming from all directions, so with his Byakugan on he was the most affected by this. My eyes. Even after deactivating his Dojutsu he had the worst headache he had ever had in his life. Haku couldn't see what was going on, but she grinned triumphantly. Looks like those ice mirrors I made to reflect and enhance the light worked perfectly. Feeling the cat mask Umbu holding her captive loosen her grip, the ice wielder slipped away silently. She was as blind as the others were, but at least now she didn't have a sword against her neck. Fia fortunately was the only one unaffected by the jutsu, and moved to gather her teammates. But first she had to get these annoying Umbu out of the way. She ran right up to the Hyuga Umbu. Earth-style headhunter jutsu. She touched him and instantly his body sunk in the ground up to his neck, leaving him easy prey for a decapitation move. Then she approached the pig-masked Umbu who was standing close to Sasami, who was still downed. Ninja art, glitter razor torture jutsu. She exhaled another burst of glowing powder that covered this man from head to toe. The pig Umbu soon screamed and tore at his body. What the hell is this? Fu smiled seeing this man suffering. She was taught the powder techniques by Shivuki as a gesture of trust to her, even when she chose to make Oto her permanent home rather than Taki. For the most part, they were distracting or irritating techniques that incapacitated an enemy while the support handled them directly. This move, the glitter razor torture, was one of the few methods where actual damage was done to the victim. The powder embedded itself in the victim's skin and clothes, striking nerve points, making the body feel like small razors were cutting into it everyone all at once. The cat Umbu was now the only one there able to fight, even though it was still too bright for her to see. I can't fight effectively here. I better get out of here. Maybe Hayate-kun can help me out. She immediately shoes-hined out of the area and took off her max, trying to regain her vision. An Umbu on the move landed beside her. You alright, Yojao-san? Yojao rubbed her eyes. I will be. Watch out for a kunoichi with green hair. There's something sinister about her. Many Hyuga came in, but Hinata created chakra blades that emerged from her palms. 5 trigrams protective blade dance. Swinging her arms around, she kept any Hyuga from getting too close to her. Those that did got cut for it. Hisashi had to admit he was impressed with this maneuver. It reminds me of the rotation, but here she sacrifices the overall effectiveness of the defense to create an offense/defense combo. Impressive, but unless you're flexible enough to react quickly you leave yourself open too much. While Hinata was handling that, Isaribi took out one of her storage scrolls. Oh no you don't. A female Hyuga elder shouted, throwing a kunao at the swimming enthusiast. She blocked with one of her trench knives and opened the scroll before biting her thumb and smearing blood on a seal. Water's not going to do you any good here. There's no place for you to contain it. A Hyuga with a mustache told her. He was right, the surrounding area had too many places for any water to drain out in. Who said I was using water? Isaribi asked. A closer look showed this seal did not have the kanji for water, but rather the one for person. A large cloud formed around the scroll, blinding even the Byakugan momentarily. When it cleared, all the Hyuga stopped what they were doing, too surprised to do anything else. It can't be. It is. How is this possible? Standing in the dissipating smoke was Hitomi Hibiki, formerly Hitomi Hyuga, wife of the late Hayashi Hyuga. And she did not look happy. Hello everyone. Miss me? Hi. Hitomi. Hisashi asked. Hitomi looked at him but her expression did not change. Hisashi. Call off your men. You know what I can do if you don't. She looked at each of them, giving her darkest frown for the elders. She wasn't imagining things when she felt they were the most surprised to see her alive and well. How can this be? We were told you died due to difficulties in giving birth that were so great you had to be taken to Tsunade-sama, but she couldn't save you. Hisashi asked, genuinely surprised though not upset to see her. Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Hitomi answered. Exaggerated? The story was downright falsified. An elder stated. Like I care what any of you think? You're the ones who tried to kill me. Hisashi jerked back in surprise. Kill you? Hitomi smirked. Why don't you ask the elders exactly why I had a difficult birth in the first dash? She stopped when one of the Hyuga 20 years older than herself threw a kunao at her, trying to silence her. Hinata used her chakra blade to cut the kunao and stop it. Don't you dare hurt my mother! She shouted, glaring at her former family. Then she started to activate the second stage of her mark. The Hyugas wanted in fear as the young girl before them started to sprout white and brown feathers and her hair became a bit spikier, though not quite like Naruto's. Her hands morphed to resemble yellow-scaled bird legs and feet shaped like human arms and hands but tipped with long black talons. Behind her grew bird wings covered almost entirely in brown feathers on the top side and white with brown horizontal stripes on the underside, and tail feather brown on both sides. Her lips hardened into what looked like a bird's beak, though it was still shaped like a human mouth, and her Byakugan became black. Right now, she looked like some combination of human being and falcon. My turn. Isaribi said before activating her own curse mark. Her skin became a soft green hue and scaled, though her underside and face became more of a pale yellow color with green stripes under her eyes. Her arms got thicker and sprouted small fins on the back of the forearms, her fingernails got sharper and could not be distinguished from her fingers. The same happened to her legs, but her toes were webbed unlike her fingers. Her hair blended with her skin causing her to become bald, yet her long bangs on the side of her face remained, just transformed into what looked like a vestigial set of arms. On top her head there emerged a fish's dorsal fin. Basically her sea creature form is her second stage in this story. What the hell are you? A bald Hyuga asked. Pissed off Kunoichi? Hinata answered. Inoichi returned to his own body and saw his allies trying to fight the other Suna genin. Temari and Kankuro were keeping the Konoha ninja effectively at bay while only struggling to avoid Chaoza's large arms. When his eyes returned towards Gaara, who was just standing there ignoring everything yet protected by his automatic sand defenses, Inoichi saw a smile on the red-haired boy that chilled him to the bone. Target the redhead first. He's the most dangerous one here. He shouted to his comrades. Not one to argue with his teammate, Shikaku started to get ready for a shadow binding for Gaara. The Sunanin saw it coming and let his sand cover the ground. Sand wave overflow, the sand rose to create a wall-like wave that if made out of water would have been perfect to surf on. This wave interfered with both Shikaku's and Chaoza's methods, but didn't make them stop trying. Suddenly the wave rushed forward as if reaching out to crush them from above. Shikaku immediately backed away as quick as he could, and he wasn't the only one. Clever ploy. This attacks us and prevents my shadow from reaching anyone at the same time. I need to try from another vantage point. Chaoza seemed to be the only one not bothered by the sand attack. Expansion Jutsu Full Body. The large ninja now became even larger, gigantic enough to step on a small building like it was a tin can. The sand wave did nothing to him, feeling mostly like a splash against his ankle. All the ninja stopped moving, even the Sunanin, awaiting his next reaction. Gaara grinned. You're not the only one who can get bigger. All of a sudden the sand around him came back to him and started to swiftly pile up. Temari and Kankuro got away as quick as they could. Chaoza reached down trying to stop the growing sand pile, but it seemed to push back against him just as hard, and it was even taking shape. What's going on here? Where's he getting all this sand? Shikaku asked. He may be using the ground he's standing on, converting it into sand. Or maybe he had storage seals containing more. Inoichi suggested. Chaoza tried even harder to keep this growing sand pile down, even pressing his whole body against it like a sumo wrestler would. Bad idea, for the mound grew arms and they grabbed him, digging their claws into him where his armor didn't cover. He struggled to pull back and saw the sand form a head on top. A head with raccoon eyes and ears, and a mouth full of jagged teeth. Behind the sand construct appeared to be a tail made from hundreds of smaller tanuki tails pressed together. From the forehead emerged the top half of Gaara's body. Shukaku, go ahead and have a little fun. Just remember, only target the Konoha shinobi. Gaara said. The Baijuyu under him smiled. Thanks kid. This will be a blast. Shikamaru, Ino, Chuji, and Tenten watched in horror as Anko transformed in front of them. Ino even tried to perform a genjutsu release but it didn't work. The mark spread all over Anko's skin until it was colored red and yellow in horizontal stripes, but then it became scaled like a reptile. Her purple hair became dark red and the ends started to look like yellow-tipped snake tails. Her eyes gained thin black rings around them and the pupils turned yellow with black slits. The ends of her fingers changed to look like snake heads with permanently closed mouths. Anko smiled, revealing serpentine fangs and a forked tongue. What the hell are you? Ino asked, scared to face such an opponent. Tenten threw a shuriken, but Anko ducked and held out her left arm. The limb stretched like rubber and grabbed her right calf. She was pulled towards the Otoku no Ichi and suddenly the arm wrapped around her and tightened. It's like she's trying to constrict me, Tenten thought, already struggling to breathe. Thinking quickly, Chuji started to prepare an attack. Expansi dash, he was cut off by a kunao to his neck held from behind. He turned and saw Kurane, her first stage mark active, decorating her skin with chains of connected diamond shapes. What the hell? Aren't you supposed to be? He looked back at where he thought she was, only to see an empty spot. Genjutsu. I tricked you all into thinking I was still down and out, so I could sneak up on you all. Kurane replied. Ino held out her hands. Mind destruction dash, she stopped when she felt a second Kurane holding a kunao against her throat. How are you dash? This has got to be another genjutsu. Shikamaru said, now captured by a third Kurane. Where's the real one? Seeing the others were held up for the moment, Anko held out her right arm and stretched it too, constricting Chuji. Then she lifted her right leg and it even stretched, allowing her to constrict Ino too. Once held tightly, the Kuranes by the genin faded away, leaving the real one holding Shimekaru. Looks like I'm the only one who has any chance of getting us out of this until reinforcements arrive. What a drag. Shikamaru thought. Sarutobi tried to hit the Kaze cage with his adamantine staff, but Tsuna's leader blocked with a gold staff of his own. Both were pressing as hard as they could against the other, trying to make the other cage slip up and reveal an opening. In the background, Sarutobi noticed that his giant stone gorilla had not hurt any of the others yet. It couldn't seem to move fast enough to hit any of them, but at least Tsunade wasn't able to shatter it in one punch. At the same time Orochimaru looked like he was waiting for something. Sarutobi, I demand an answer for why you tried what you did to my village. Kaze Cage told the old man. Sarutobi did not look intimidated. I did no harm to your village. Any harm that happened was your own fault. It was you and you know it. No, it was you and you know it. Sarutobi countered. All I did was suggest something. You're the one who chose to take it seriously. Did I order you to treat your Jinhiriki like something less than human? Did I order you to make his training hell until he snapped and would lash out at you and Suna until nothing was left but rubble? Did I? No, I didn't. I merely made a comment. Whatever happened, it was because you chose to take my threat seriously. You're just as mad at yourself as you are at me, you just won't admit it. Thinking quickly, the Kaze Cage tried a sweep kick to unbalance the old Hokage. Sarutobi saw it and jumped above it, but unfortunately this gave Kaze Cage the opportunity to attack again with his staff. The end hit Sarutobi's helmet and knocked it off, giving the old man a bit of a bruise on his left cheek. Maybe you're right. But what I really want to know was why did you give me that comment in the first place? What did you have to gain from telling me to treat my own like a monster? Did you want Suna to be destroyed? We were your allies and posed no threat to you. If anything, getting rid of us would only weaken you because you have no support if someone attacked you. Like now. Kushina was heard stated, using her chains to immobilize the gorilla golem. Sarutobi was surprised. They caught it? How? Kaze Cage smiled. What did you expect? We're in a finite area thanks to the barrier. Not to mention I placed a lot of my gold rust in the rubble you created it from, so now it's really slow and heavy. I'm kind of surprised it lasted as long as it has. This thing's got to have a weak spot, Tsunade said. She then ran up the stone body and got on its face. Might as well try here. She cocked her fist and thrust a punch right between the eyes of the stone gorilla. It shattered like it was made of dry clay. Kushina recalled her chains as Tsuan landed on her feet. Nice job, Tsunade-sama. You got it on the first try. Kaze Cage recalled all his now free gold dust. Now, answer my question, damn it. What were you trying to accomplish when you tried to turn me against my son? Me and the Wind Daimyo had an agreement. He got tired of funding your village but knew if he got involved it would only give him bad propaganda. And I couldn't invade you since my shinobi aren't used to desert terrain and my Jinhiriki at the time was too young to be useful. So I proposed that allowing your village to destroy itself was the best way to handle it. The Wind Daimyo cut off funding and missions little by little while you were supposed to drive your own weapon insane and against you. With Suna gone, Konoha receives more work, more pay, better status, and one less Jinhiriki that could be used against us. Kaze Cage glared, looking just like Gaara right then. You were hoping to destroy my entire village and every innocent in it, just to put a few more Ryo in your wallet. Ninja kill for pay. That's in the job description. Your daimyo decided he'd rather give my village mission when he needed work than pay to keep your village supplied and happy. As for me, would you turn down money from 2 daimyos? Sarutobi replied. I gotta agree with him there. Inma said, returning to his monkey form. In a business sense, every other village is just competition. Even the allies. And if your own daimyo deserted you, why should Hiruzen have pity for you? Kaze Cage stood there, changing his gold staff into a long sword. As a businessman and a politician in charge of an entire village, I cannot fault you for that. If it had been the other way around I'd likely have done the same. However, as a father, I will make you pay. Wait just a moment, Kazekage-sama. Orochimaru calmly said, making the 2 cages turn towards him. Next to the Snake Sunin was Jiraiya and Naruto, who had used the substitution technique to get in and out of the barrier thanks to specially made seals both wore for this exact purpose and moment. Ready, you two? Ready. They both said. Oh Naruto, remove your disguise. It will make things go smoother later. Orochimaru added. Gotcha, Ji-san. Using his chakra, Naruto forced the hair dye and makeup off him, revealing his blonde hair and whisker marks. It may have been 10 years, but Sarutobi immediately knew who he was. The name, the whiskers, the hair, the fact he was with Orochimaru. Naruto's been alive all this time. Now Orochimaru. Jiraiya told his pale teammate. Orochimaru nodded and performed a large number of hand signs while Naruto formed the tiger sign. Edo Tensei totality. The lid on the coffin burst open, causing a large amount of gray smoke to rush out and make everyone cough a bit. Naruto now. Orochimaru told the young blonde. Naruto came up to the coffin, flared his chakra, and made direct contact with whatever was inside it. There was a glow of white chakra that soon turned blue and got brighter. Almost too bright to look at. Then it stopped, and Naruto stepped aside with a smile. Sarutobi saw a silhouette of a person come out. Is this Tobirama-sensei's jutsu he was experimenting on? Did Orochimaru somehow make it work? You can't do this. There's a reason the Nidaime declared it forbidden. I'm not the Nidaime, am I, sensei? Orochimaru asked. The smoke cleared, and standing there was probably the last person Sarutobi expected to see. A tall young man with blonde hair that framed his face, wearing an open off-white cloak that had red-orange flames on the bottom, over a jounin vest, black cloth arm covers, blue pants, and black shoes. There was no mistaking this person. Am I? Minato. The revived Yondaime Hokage blinked. Huh? Where am I? How did I dash? Minato-kun. Kushina happily said, rushing up to her husband. I'm so glad you're back. She hugged him, but he didn't react. Say something, dear. How did you get so old? He innocently asked. Idiot. She yelled before hitting him on top of his head. I'm not old. And it's not my fault you haven't aged a day while I've aged 13 years. 13 years? Minato asked. Jiraiya came up to his student. Minato, I'm not sure how to tell you this, but you've been dead for 13 years while your wife was in a coma. Wow, you're really gotten old, Ero-sensei. Minato joked, this time making his wife laugh. If you can crack jokes, perhaps you can help us fight. Jiraiya said before pointing to Sarutobi, who was still flabbergasted by all this. Remember your wish for Naruto to be seen as a hero? Well, he's responsible for ensuring that Konoha saw Naruto as quite possibly the furthest thing from hero as you can get. What? Minato asked. What are you talking about? Something tells me we're not getting out of this alive, Hiruzen. Inma told his partner. Chapter 68 Invasion 4. Kushina grabbed her husband's hand tenderly. Minato, I'm afraid we don't have time to explain everything, so to summarize, Konoha disregarded your last wish and it's all thanks to Sarutobi. The Sandaime Hokage was quite nervous now but avoided showing it. Only one thing was keeping him from surrendering. Here I've been fighting 3 Sannin, a Kage, and Kushina. All this time they could have attacked together and finished me off at any moment, and yet they haven't. All they've been doing is wearing me out. Were they waiting for this? Why? Why make Minato finish me off instead if they're the ones out for my blood? This can only mean, they brought back Minato for a different reason. I better get rid of him first. If Konoha saw the Yondaime resurrected yet fighting for the enemy, it would demoralize us for years to come. Wait, is that why they brought him back? Minato looked at the older man. Sarutobi, what does that mean? His tone was uncertain, yet close to being threatening. They're lying to you, Minato. They're turned traitor and are just making up gibberish to get you to betray the village you love so much. Kushina shook her head as if disappointed by hearing this. Minato, you trust me, right? Of course, Kushina. Then trust me when I say this man here deserves to die. In our absence he's turned Konoha into a cesspool and made our sacrifice meaningless. Our son isn't even able to live here anymore. If there's anyone I want dead more than Madara Uchiha, it's Sarutobi. Needless to say, Minato was surprised to hear his wife say this. You want me to help you kill Sarutobi? How do I know this isn't some kind of trick and you're some kind of enemy in disguise? I first said I loved you after you rescued me from Kumo and complimented my hair. I first kissed you when you made Chiyunin and kicked the ass of that Iwanin who had been hitting on me. And I first told you about the Kyuubi the day you accidentally got to second base. Kushina told him. Mom. I'm right here, you know. Naruto said, bothered to hear that about his parents. Sorry, Naruto. Kushina said with mirth, showing she enjoyed embarrassing her son a little. Naruto? Minato asked, looking at his no longer infant son who had a snake on his shoulders. How old are you now? 13, Dad. But we need to save the catching up for later. Right now we're in a fight and we need your help. Seeing the two transformed girls unsettled the Hyugas, and they were even more unsettled when their Byakugans told them this was no mere illusion. They had truly changed shape. Hitmai almost laughed at the gaping faces of her former clan. Surprised? Say hello to our village's secret weapon. Your village has shapeshifters? Impossible. And yet you see too right before your all-seeing eyes. Hitomi added. Hinata then jumped into the air, her wings flapping keeping her up. And this isn't just for show either. With her lips hardened like a beak, she kept making clicking sounds when she spoke. Hisashi looked worried, but he soon confidently smiled. Nice intimidation ploy, but I see a huge flaw in it. The bird girl cannot attack and keep her distance at the same time, or else she would have done it by now. The fact that I'm still standing here talking proves that. And the fish girl looks like she won't last long outside water. So Hitomi, you're the only real threat here and you're too outnumbered to significantly harm us first. The way I see it, you've lost. And that's exactly what we wanted you to see. Hitomi stated. Before anyone could speak, a bunch of pipes burst in the area, spraying water all over the place. Isaribi used her chakra to hold it all in place and form a gigantic water prison containing them all while Hinata hovered outside the aquadome. Did they set up some bombs on the pipes timed or triggered for this moment just for this purpose? Hisashi asked himself, holding his breath and struggling in the water. Isaribe and Hitomi looked at each other with light grins. Hitomi nodded, then suddenly disappeared in a puff of smoke, sending a small wave through the water with her removal. Where did she go? 1FO, the Hyugas asked before realizing talking underwater wasn't a good idea. Isaribe heard the question clearly but didn't respond. Instead she moved through the water like a fish. Or to be more precise, like a shark, given the fact she had her mouth open ready to bite. The Hyuga got ready to hit her Tenketsu, since the Jukin could still work underwater albeit much slower. He hit her shoulders but she hit him too, biting his left forearm hard enough to snap the bone and draw blood. Another Hyuga saw this and panicked. I'm out of here. He tried swimming out of the water prison. The water prison technique usually worked two ways: either it was small yet pressured enough that the captive could barely move, or large and unpressured so the captive could move yet something else, usually something dangerous, could be in the water with them. This one used here was the second type, so the Hyugas could swim out if they could reach the edge. Isaribe ignored him, so he reached the barrier and took a breath. His vision was blurred thanks to some water in his eyes and his Byakugan wasn't active, but he could sense a sudden shadow appear. Before he could really see the light blocker, he felt a slash across his eyes. Aoic! Screaming in utter agony, his hand covered his wound, and he tried to activate his Byakugan, only to discover he couldn't. He was blind, and bleeding heavily. Hisashi saw what happened with his Byakugan. Clever. The fish girl attacks us within the water, but if we leave the bird girl attacks us from there and can even rip our eyes out with her claws. Blind or drowned, what a choice. What do I do? Shikamaru asked himself. I could easily capture the snake lady with my shadow given her limbs are all over the place, but that will leave me open to the one behind me. And if I target her instead, I'm still vulnerable to the snake lady who may have a sneak attack up her sleeve. Sad fact is, that's actually my best chance here given she likely needs that leg to keep standing. I better go with the second option. If it's not too much trouble, could you tell me exactly why your village is trying to destroy ours? Shikamaru asked. What did we ever do to you? Who said we came here to destroy? Kurane asked above a whisper. What? The Narayer asked, not expecting that answer. I don't recall anyone ever saying we wanted to wipe Konoha off the map. Then why are you doing this? Shikamaru repeated, a little anger in his voice. Me personally? Because my cage says your village needs a gigantic kick in the ass and I agree. As for him personally, that's not for me to say. Kurane then pulled back and stepped away. Oh, and in case you can't comprehend this, I'm well aware you've got me in your shadow. To get out, all I have to do is one thing. Would you like to see it? A chakra-infused trench kunao flew past the Oto Kunoichi, cutting off some of her hair. Get the hell away from my student. Asuma yelled. Kurane smirked, only able to look at Asuma because Shikamaru turned his head that way too. Tell him to release me and I'd be glad to. As long as he has me snared like this, I'm afraid I'm incapable of granting your request. Asuma-sensei, worry about the others too. They could be close to death by now. Shikamaru shouted. He was right. Ino, Chuji, and Tenten were running out of air and their vision was starting to go black. Tenten used her free arm to try stabbing Anko's limb with a kunao but the snake summoner wouldn't let go. Ino was trying to use her clan's mind tricks again but she couldn't properly aim and there was no way she was going to repeat trying to get inside her head. Pulling out his trench knives, Asuma faced Anko while keeping Kurane in his sight. Shikamaru, keep that one busy while I fight this one. No problem. Shikamaru replied. Yes problem. Kurane joked as she activated her second stage. Chauza and Shikaka were at it like two gigantic sumo wrestlers. At their feet the smaller forces were fighting too, though they couldn't help looking at the giants on occasion. Damn, this thing's like fighting a monster. Chauza told himself as he strained to hold back the sand construct. It was harder for him because Shikaka's body was denser and had the advantage of having claws to grip with. Even with his chakra-reinforced muscles those claws hurt. Acting on impulse Chauza cocked his head back then slammed his head into Shikaka's. The giant tanuki was dazed and his grip loosened, while Gaara was moved to a safer location to avoid being caught in the crossfire. In that brief moment Chaozu broke away and took a step back. He cocked his fist and fired a hard solid punch right to the Baijuya's jaw, hoping it would further slow down the giant demon. But to the Akimichi leader's shock, Shukaku caught his fist with his mouth. "Let go of my hand," Chaozu demanded, trying to get free, but the tanuki wasn't listening. Then he bit down, severing his right hand from his arm. Chaozu screamed, pulling back with his left hand, trying to apply pressure to stop the bleeding. The pain of the injury affected his jutsu and forced him to return to normal size again. "Chaozu!" Inoichi shouted as he approached his wounded friend and pulled out some medical wrap. "Here, let me help stop the bleeding. Don't forget the enemy, Inoichi," Chaozu said, then saw his now normal size removed hand fall to the ground in front of him. "I sure hope this can be reattached. Got a sealing scroll? I'm on it," the Yamanaka leader said as he went to get the hand. Shukaku's footstep stopped him, since the Baijuya stepped right on the severed hand without even realizing it. Apparently he's on it instead. Then its tail hit the ground hard, sending a shockwave throughout the area, knocking many people off their feet or out of the trees. The shockwave broke Shukaku's concentration when he was about to trap Kankuro in his shadow, so the puppet user remained free and his Karasu shot out a few poisoned senbon. They struck some Umbu who wouldn't feel the effect right away but would be no threat when they did. Temari was beating back a few more Umbu with her fan, now being assisted by Baki in the process. "What took you so long, sensei?" "I was busy taking care of the Umbu in other places. But once I saw the Shukaku I figured that was my signal to make sure you three were still breathing. Reinforcements shouldn't be far behind me." Temari looked behind her and saw a wave of Suna Umbu coming to their aid. She was slightly disappointed that Naruto wasn't with them. "Ruto-kun, stay safe for me." Kakashi was still in a tight spot, but he had an idea that he thought just might work. What he did was create a single shadow clone. 2 against 2 are better odds, and my odds improve more if the clone fights the wood user instead of the bone user. I'd rather just leave, but if they're looking for a specific person, my best way to help out is keeping them away from said person. With that, the real Kakashi charged towards Kimimaro while the clone went towards Yamato, both armed with Chidoris. The clone wouldn't last long after doing one of those, but it wouldn't need to if it hit the wood user rather than the wood. The clone was quickly getting closer to Yamato, lightning blade ready to pierce. Yamato formed a hand sign and something wooden covered his front side and took on his image. Then it broke free from him, creating a wood clone that got right in front of Kakashi's clone and took the hit for the real Yamato. The impact of the attack destroyed the wood clone, and the lack of chakra to continue made Kakashi's clone dispel. Meanwhile, the real Kakashi was close to striking Kimimaro. The white-haired Kaguya just stood there like Kakashi was a mere fly pretending to be a bee. He reached behind himself and winced a small bit. Dance of the Clematis, Vine. With that, he quickly pulled out his spinal column and used it like a whip to hit Kakashi. Without his Sharingan, Kakashi wasn't able to see the attack given using the Chidori now gave him tunnel vision. The bone whip struck his side and made him skid across the ground for a moment, but he stopped himself and got back on his feet, holding the cut he now had on his left abdominal area. Did he just rip his spine out of his body? How could he still be able to stand and move with that body part taken out? Medically it's impossible, unless his spinal nerves are still connected and a new set of vertebrae have already grown in the original's place. Dance of the Clematis, Flower. Kimimaro added, bone armor sprouting from his left arm and spiraling together to create a flower-like shield encompassing his entire arm and tipped with a point. Yamato got beside his ally, hands ready to make his next jutsu. Kakashi didn't like his odds here. This is out of my league. I can't face them both on my own for much longer, but maybe I can do one more thing before I retreat. He started a long set of hand signs, and saw Yamato was starting a long but different set too. Earth-style Earth Dragon Jutsu, he said as he finished and pressed his hand on the ground. Wood-style Forest Dragon Jutsu, Yamato said at the same time with his own hand being pressed to the ground. In front of Kakashi the earth rose up and took on the form of a serpentine dragon ready to attack whatever was in front of it. In front of Yamato, a nearly identical dragon made of wood and sprouting some branches and leaves, like a tree, came out of the ground too. The two draconian constructs stared at each other, and then lunged at each other like angry cobras. Neither one had an apparent elemental advantage over the other, and the clash of the two combined with constricting and biting tore the two to pieces. "You're good, I'll give you that," Yamato told Kakashi. "But I bet having your Sharingan has greatly affected you." Copycat Kakashi. "Not so much, I can't keep fighting you," Kakashi claimed. "But why are you after the man you're after? Why should we tell you?" Kimimaro calmly asked back. "All you need to know is we are." Before more fighting could continue, a new figure jumped into the area, facing Yamato and Kimimaro and away from Kakashi. They wore a normal Konoha Umbu outfit, but the mask was blank, pure white, and a hood concealed the person's hair. "Kimimaro-sama, Yamato-sama, the hideout of Danzu-san has been located. Please follow me." The two Otonin were surprised, as was Kakashi, but Kimimaro looked right at the silver-haired Konoha as he recalled the bones on his arm back into his body. "Be grateful we have no further business with you, Hatake-san. Now we're going after our true target." "Not if I dash," Kakashi said, but nonetheless the three in front of him shoes-hined away, preventing him from doing anything more. Seeing a discarded bone, he got an idea and summoned Pakun. "What's up, Kakashi?" the pug casually asked. "I need you to track the scent of the person this belonged to if you can," the former Umbu said, showing the finger bone Kimimaro had used not long ago. "Whoever lost this must be in pain," Pakun commented before sniffing it. "The scent is too faint and unspecific. I doubt any canine could track it. You'd be better off with an Abarame for this. Looks like I'll have to find them the old-fashioned way," Kakashi said before sending Pakun home and heading out to see how else he could defend Konoha. "So what should we do now?" Sasami asked as she and her teammates got away from the Umbu. Right now the three Kunoichi were standing atop a building watching the invasion play out. They could see the purple barrier close to the stadium, small explosions in random spots, and even Shukaku fight in the distance. "Part of me wants to go help my fellow Jinhiriki, but my cautious side says two of us fighting in one spot might cause more trouble," Fu mentioned. "We should keep up our objective and keep the village defense occupied and away from our forces," Haku offered. "But where can we do the most damage? Would you like a hand?" an approaching voice asked. "Subsonic-san. What are you doing here?" Sasami asked. "Just finishing up some personal business. Now I'm itching to get some tension out of my system. And I know just where to do it." "Where?" the three Genin Kunoichi asked. Subsonic smirked under her mask. "We've got forces handling the Hokage and forces handling the Umbu. Some forces are trying to find a dirty rat named Danzu. He's going to be hard to find, but fortunately in my time here I've learned where his hidden base is. Want to help me storm the place?" "How did you find it?" Haku asked. "Technically, I didn't," Subsonic said, confusing the girls. "Oh, you didn't know? My line of work allowed me to get access to a good number of the ninja here, but I didn't work alone. Like Jiraiya-sama, I had agents scattered to help me. Oto has its own spy network here in Konoha, with me as the acting head and messenger. So there's more than one Subsonic?" Sasami asked. "Oh no, not at all. I'm the only Subsonic. But I do have helpers, and right now they should be making things difficult for Konoha." "Who are they?" "You'll find out later. Now let's go see what they found," Subsonic said before leaving, and the three Kunoichi followed. The Hyugas were getting desperate. They couldn't hold their breath much longer, but each time any of them went to get out of the water bubble, Hinata was right there to blind them. And that was if Isaribi herself couldn't get to them first. They had been there less than 2 minutes and already the water was quite bloody. Now that didn't matter. The trapped Hyugas were running out of air and the need to breathe was overpowering all other cognitive functions. All the Hyugas that could still move were swimming in all different directions, hoping that the two transformed girls couldn't target them all this way. Fortunately they were right, since they outnumbered the Oto Genin 6-1. Isaribi could only stop one of them while Hisashi and 10 others managed to get some air, and Hinata could only target one of them. So with that, Hisashi and 9 others got out of the water prison jutsu, coughing heavily. From behind them, the water prison exploded like a bomb, sending a strong wave of water at their disoriented backsides and pushing them forward, right into the walls and railings of the surrounding area. A recovering Niji who had been trying to get back to help his clansmen had been hit by the wave too and sent back over the railing again. When Hisashi and the others recovered, they saw Hinata perched on the railing like a bird and Isaribi recollecting water near herself but not covered in it. "What do you want with us?" he asked, showing a little fear for once. With Hinata's beak mouth it was hard to tell if she was smiling, but her eyes showed a hint of mirth. "Nothing, except for you to not interfere in the rest of our army. We knew your group would prioritize claiming me over defending your home, so we put up a struggle and kept you from doing your duty to protect Konoha. Your village is falling and you did nothing to stop it because you are more concerned about that power desire you have." Isaribi added. "You don't honestly think this is the entire Hyuga clan, do you? Others are fighting in the battle as we speak." One of the other Hyuga shouted. "Oh, we know. But as long as you're here and not out there, you can't guide them during this." Hinata answered, then flexed her talons. "Or after? You really plan to kill us?" Hisashi asked. "No, she doesn't," a Hyuga woman bleeding from her arms and left leg stated. "If they really did intend that, we wouldn't be here talking about it. On the contrary. We just wanted to give you the honor of last words." Isaribi countered. "Have any? There's no way you're going to kill us," one of the still able-bodied Hyuga declared as he got back on his feet and charged. Hinata got off her perch and next thing anyone knew she was a blur that reappeared behind him and he stopped in his tracks. He twitched slightly and his mouth was open in a silent shout before blood erupted from his midsection and the top half of his body fell off his bottom half. Stunned by this, some other Hyuga found the strength to try and attack Hinata too. She repeated her strange maneuver and even cleaved 4 in a row this way. The others got wise and chose to try and flee, but Isaribi pounced and bit one of them on the throat. He died soon, but 3 others managed to get away unscathed and ran for a safe location, leaving only Hisashi left to face the transformed girls who turned their sights on him. "Why us? Why do you hate our clan so much?" Hisashi asked, hoping his son wouldn't get involved. "Oh, I don't. But this isn't about me," Isaribi said, returning to her human form. Hinata was returning as well, but she looked full of repressed anger waiting to burst forth like a volcano. "Why do I hate the Hyuga so much? I have my reasons. Reasons I do not wish to explain. All you need to know is your so-called honorable clan acted criminal to me and those closest to me, and this is karmic retribution. I'm sending a message to your enslaving, child-beating, two-faced self-destructive clan. That message being you can't get away with being cruel forever. But I was never like that," Hisashi defended. "I was once part of the branch family. I know full well how abusive the Hyuga clan can be to others. Believe me, I understand exactly what you're mad about. But I've been changing everything in them. If you kill me, it will all be undone and they will revert back to their old habits." Hinata stayed in her spot, but she did not look pacified. "You wish me to believe that the only thing that stands between the Hyuga and criminal behavior is you and the laws of Konoha?" "I wouldn't put it that way," Hisashi said. "But your point is that the Hyuga clan will only behave when someone with rank over them is watching, and once they can't then the clan will do as it pleases." The Byakugan-wielding girl told her biological uncle, though she didn't care at all how they were related. Hisashi gained a tired expression. "You're convinced my clan has no honor, aren't you?" At this point he was tired of defending his case in a futile argument, but he was hoping to delay her long enough to buy time for backup to arrive. "What honor is there in beating someone under the age of 4 until they have bruises and calling it training? What honor is there in poisoning a pregnant woman about to give birth? What honor is there in turning your own relatives into slaves and threatening them with death or agony when they ask to be treated like human beings?" Hisashi was silent, unable to refute 2 of the claims. There had been times when some Hyuga masked child abuse as training and were put to death when the child itself came close to it, and the caged bird seal was pretty much a poorly disguised tool of torture. But the part about the pregnant woman was news to him. I admit the Hyuga are not perfect. No clan is. But there's no way any of us would poison a Pregdesh. He was silenced by a kunao thrown into his throat. Oh? And why exactly did Hitomi Hyuga disappear? Hinata asked. Let's go before someone gets here. Isaribi suggested. Hinata nodded and the two shoes hined away. Unable to attack them now, a recovering Niji immediately moved to his dying father. Ota-san. He could tell from the wound that Hisashi wasn't going to live much longer whether or not the kunao was removed. If anything, it was a miracle he wasn't dead right then. Hisashi lifted his fingers and dabbed them in his blood before writing something on the ground for Niji. 1439. Then he went limp. Shikamaru felt his shadow hold on Kuranabe, ripped apart was the best way to describe it. Something about her new chakra is counteracting my own. I can't maintain my hold on her anymore. He pulled his shadow back and stepped back too to be closer to his sensei in anticipation of what she might do. Kuranabe's mark spread over her skin and her body began to transform. At first, her skin just looked like it was hardening, forming a shell of sorts but not an exoskeleton since there were no joints or gaps in the shell. Her hair condensed and solidified into a set of spikes on her head like gigantic quills or Jiraiya's Harijizo Jutsu. Her skin and eyes turned dark blue, almost indigo, and reflected light like a gemstone. Overall, she looked like she had turned into a human sapphire dressed in a bandage-style outfit. Kuranabe smiled and flexed her fingers, which now ended in points much like her hair. And while not sharp, they didn't look harmless. Testing to see if this was just a genjutsu, Asuma tried a genjutsu release, only to see no change. Still desperate, he threw a chakraless kunao and Kuranabe batted it away with her hand. A clanking sound was heard when the metal knife collided with her crystal appendage. In case you're still in denial, this is real. As real as my friend over there. No need to hurry, Nai-chan. I'm sure these kids won't last much longer anyway. Anko called out. Asuma looked over and saw that Ino, Chuji, and Tenten indeed would not last much longer if they didn't get free of Anko's strangling. But the weird thing was he suspected Anko wasn't really trying to kill them. A real snake, like a python for example, could kill a person in seconds by constricting the neck if it tried, so she should have been able to kill 3 genin several times by now. This felt more like she was keeping them as hostages instead. What do you want from us? Asuma asked Kuranabe, hoping his hostage idea was correct and he could bargain or trick the kunoichi into releasing the genin. Even so, he held up a new trench knife that he put his wind chakra into, giving it a sharper edge. What do we want? Well, I could ask you and those you know to simply withdraw from the fight and leave us alone, or give us information on someone we're looking for, but I highly doubt you'll do either. So how about this instead? You spread a message for me. A message? Asuma asked. Shikamaru was confused too. Yes, a message. Something that all of Konoha needs to know when this is over. And what message is that? The former member of the Guardian 12 suspiciously asked. Kuranabe smirked. You'll know when the time comes. Bye. She then left by jumping over the ledge to go elsewhere. Anko saw this and released her captives, who fell on their butts gasping for air as she followed her good friend. Asuma immediately checked on his students and Tenten with Shikamaru's help. But Kuranabe's words haunted him. I'll know when the time comes? What does that mean? The older Inoshikajo trio and their support were surrounded by a group of Suna shinobi and they're released by Jiraiya. Many of the Sunanin looked apprehensive being in the vicinity of Shukaku, but as long as the Tanuki didn't attack them they weren't going to draw attention to themselves. Inoichi and Shikaku looked the freshest and most able to fight, while Chauza and the others looked like they needed to get to the hospital before they fought anymore. Shikaku's mind was working a mile a minute right then. I have 2 options. I can try and trap them all and hope Inoichi can attack them all quickly, or we can surrender and hope they're not here just to kill us all. It's troublesome, but I think I know which one I should try. I don't suppose you'd let us surrender, would you? Shikaku said when he fell onto a knee, looking like he was running low on stamina now. Not really. We're not here for a senseless slaughter, but we're not interested in prisoners either. Baki told the Nara head. This confused Shikaku. You're not trying to kill us or take prisoners. Then why in Kami's name are you attacking our village? For the most part, we're trying to make a point to Konoha's leadership as well as improve our chances of getting more business in the future. A different Sunanin answered. Konoha's been taking a lot of our jobs from us, and unless we do something about it, your village is going to bleed us dry. Would you do anything different if the situation was reversed? I can understand the business part. That's understandable. But what this point you claim you're trying to make? Inoichi asked. Kazekage-sama is doing that for us, so you don't need us to tell you. By now Shikaka was finished looking over the area and preparing his jutsu. Shadow branching trap jutsu. On the ground his shadow sprouted multiple limbs and quickly sprang out to ensnare all the surrounding Sunanin. Temari and Kankuro got out of the way and into the trees, but the rest didn't and were forced to stand in place. Jutsu success. Get Inoichi. The Yamanaka head tried to prepare his own jutsu, but was halted by a sudden gust of wind coming from Temari. Shikaku's shadow kept its hold, but now he was worried his partner wouldn't succeed in a follow-up maneuver. A rumble on the ground told them that Shikaku was coming closer, ready to do some serious damage even if the Sunanin couldn't. Despite his wound, Chaozu was in no mood to stand back and do nothing. Full body expansion jutsu. He regrew back to giant size and faced the Ichibai again. Regaining his bearings, Inoichi started his jutsu again before someone could interfere. Mind distortion jutsu. This was one of the few multi-target techniques the Yamanaka had, allowing him to affect everyone within a small radius, just big enough to affect everyone Shikaku had trapped. It wouldn't hurt them, just give them what felt like a sudden hangover at full power. The only downside would be Shikaku would be affected too, and thus the shadow jutsu would be undone, and normally that would be when Chaozu would demolish them before they recovered, so now Inoichi would have to fight on his own. The jutsu took effect and everyone around Inoichi was stricken with the worst headache they ever had without alcohol being involved. Shikaku released his jutsu involuntarily as expected and he and the others collapsed holding their heads. Before any could try to recover or ignore the effects, Inoichi pulled out two longer than standard kunao and rushed to the closest Sunanin, which happened to be Baki. Too dazed to properly defend himself, the half-masked Sunanin was about to be sliced in a lethal area. Has Kankuro's puppet not intercepted and taken the hit for him? Damn, those two genin were outside my jutsu's range. But I can still take them. He used his first long kunao to break Karasu's mouth and damage the Senbon launcher, and his second weapon he kept at bay. A wise choice, as Karasu swung its arm revealing a blade Inoichi had to block with his own. Temari tried to sneak up on the blonde Jounin and hit him in the head, but he heard her and ducked. In the process Karasu's arm got free and continued its swing, so the blade ended up cutting Temari above her breasts under her collarbone. Seeing the wound, Kankuro withdrew his puppet and immediately approached his sister. Oh. Crap, oh crap, oh crap. He kept saying, knowing his weapons were poisoned and if Temari died there'd be 3 people ready to beat him to a pulp for it. Hang in there, Nissan. He said, reaching into his pockets for the antidote. Inoichi did another hand sign. Mind destruction jutsu. He aimed this one at Temari, causing her to become catatonic for a time before she sprang up to her feet. What the? What are you doing to her? Kankuro asked. I'm fighting a puppet user with a puppet. But mine's harder for you to hurt. Kankuro had the advantage of being the more experienced puppet user in this fight, but Inoichi had the advantage of having a puppet Kankuro didn't want to attack. Not only that, but Shikaku was already on his way to recovering while the Sunanin would need more time. Shikaku had been exposed to this method before and expected it, so naturally he had a quicker recovery time than first-time victims. Kankuro's only backup was Gaara and Shikaku, and both of them were fighting the one-handed Chaozu, who was amazingly holding his own against the Sand Tanuki. It wasn't going to last long. Shikaku was a chakra monster and Chaozu had lost a fair amount of blood already. Not to mention Shikaku had more to attack with, and now was trying to crush the Akimichi head with his tail by wrapping it around his midsection. The pressure of the tail was making it difficult for Chaozu to breathe, but he pushed on like he was trying to shove the Baijuyu out of the village. Strange thing was, he was little by little close to succeeding, although Shikaku had little problem pushing back, creating a standstill. All the while Gaara did nothing, using most of his energy and focus just to help maintain Shikaku's body while being alert so he could get rid of it before the Baijuyu decided he wanted more targets than allowed. If he could, he'd attack Chaozu with Shukaku or leave to help his siblings, but this was all he could do. Shukaku meanwhile didn't mind that. He was loose and permitted to kill, and this large Konoha had offered himself up to the slaughter. In no real hurry to get his fun over with, the Ichibai enjoyed making the Akimichi struggle first, but now he was getting bored. "You bore me, Konoha. Time to end this and get me some more blood," the Tanuki said. "Over my dead body," Chaozu said. "I agree completely," Shukaku said before he opened his mouth wide and lunged forward, his mouth locking down over Chaozu's head. The gigantic ninja tried to get the Baijuyo to let go, but Shukaku clamped down, and next thing he knew, Chaozu was headless. There was a lot of blood from the wound before Chaozu's body fell down and shrank back to its original size, luckily doing so before it hit the ground. The blood didn't as quickly, so the ninja in the area were covered in it. Inoichi froze and looked up, not seeing his old friend anymore. Shukaku looked up too, only to not see Chaozu fighting the sand construct. At that time Inoichi's hold over Temari broke and she collapsed. Taking the opportunity, Kankuro got to her and injected her with the antidote before it did anything worse than it already had. "Chaozu!" The Yamanaka and Nara shouted when they realized what happened. The Sunanin were starting to get back to their feet, but the Konoha had something more important to them on their minds. Wanting to get to their comrade ASAP, Inoichi threw a paper bomb kunao to the ground and helped Shukaku leave with him. Kankuro saw the waiting explosive and knew he couldn't get everyone out of there in time. Unable to choose which ones to save, he grabbed Temari and prepared to at least save her. He got back, but then Shukaku's arm thrust down and covered the explosive, taking the hit. Sand was blown everywhere, but no one died. "Damn, I missed them," Shukaku said, aiming for Inoichi and Shukaku at the time. Sasami, Haku, and Fia followed Subsonic to a currently unoccupied section of Konoha's protective wall. When they got there, 3 people showed up, looking like they were expecting the quartet of Kunoichi. They were dressed like Umbu, but they all had blank masks, hoods, and long sleeves. So like Subsonic, they displayed no identifying characteristics. "Ah, Subsonic-sama, glad to see you made it," the center one greeted. At that moment Yamato and Kimimaro showed up, following a 4th masked ninja. "Great timing, Yamato-san and Kimimaro-san. And hello bass, sharp, flat, and tenor. You certain this is the entry point?" Subsonic greeted back. All 4 nodded. "Indeed. We've seen some ninja go in and out here, including Danzu himself. This is the place. Good. Let's see if the guy's down there." Subsonic-san, there's nothing here," Sasami pointed out. "Watch and learn," the former Uchiha matriarch told the orange-haired girl. The masked nin, dubbed Base by Subsonic, went to the wall and pulled out a small block that normally looked like a mere part of the wall. When he pulled it out, it turned out it was connected to some kind of mechanism, and he rotated it like a key. When he turned it 180 degrees, he put it back in place. Suddenly a previously invisible door opened on the wall, revealing a corridor that led into the wall and under it. "Wow!" the Kunoichi genin said. "No time to admire the craftsmanship. There's likely to be an alert system." The masked nin Subsonic called sharp said as Bass, Flat, and Tenor went into the doorway. Subsonic joined them with her remaining helper, and Sasami, Haku, and Fia followed. As if on a timer, the door closed automatically. Chapter 69 Invasion 5. Hiruzen Sarutobi was a veteran of several battles and even a war. He donned the Hokage hat and roll twice, taught the 3 Sunin, and had faced the Kyuubi itself and lived to tell about it. So naturally he was not a man who feared much, even death. But facing Minato in his prime while he was accompanied by his own students, Minato's wife, and the Kaze cage all at once, that would make even Hanzo of AIM sweat nervously. He only had one hope to get out of this alive. "Minato, don't believe the lies these people are trying to feed you. They've become corrupt and dangerous. They're just trying to use you to do something you know you don't want to do. Stop them before they destroy Konoha, before they destroy everything you ever cared about." Naturally Minato did not know what to do. On the one hand, his predecessor, a man he knew to be honorable, was telling him that his wife, Sensei, and 2 other Sunin along with his now teenage son, had turned traitor and wanted to obliterate Konoha. But on the other hand, Kushina and Jiraiya, two more people he knew were trustworthy and honorable, were out for Sarutobi's blood, and they weren't the only ones. Neither situation made any sense to him, and he knew he was expected to choose one to fight on. The problem was which side had the more honest claim. The more he thought about it, the less certain he was. "Minato, we know you are uncertain, but you must believe me, that man is the true corrupt and dangerous one," Kushina told her husband. "And we're not asking you to destroy Konoha." "You're not?" Sarutobi asked, not expecting that. "Nope. In fact, now we've got plenty of time to tell him the truth of the matter," Orochimaru stated confidently. Sarutobi did not like the sound of that and began another jutsu. Before he finished, he heard one being called out. "Metal-style steel prison jutsu." Dozens of metal poles burst from the ground surrounding the old Hokage and twisted and bent to create what looked like an oversized birdcage with no door. "What on earth is this?" Sarutobi asked. "It's exactly what it looks like," Naruto answered. Jiraiya came up to his revived student. "Minato, now we can tell you exactly what has been going on in your absence. You know nothing. You're all biased and self-serving," Sarutobi angrily shouted. Kushina held her sword against his neck. "And you aren't? Be silent, you fool, or my blade will cut you, and you know what will happen to you if that happens." She then faced Jiraiya. "Please continue, Jiraiya-sama." Sarutobi really wanted to stop this, but Kushina's sword really frightened him since he knew full well what it could do to a person. And since in Minato, he was unlikely to act instead. Jiraiya looked at Minato, looking to the former Hokage just like he did when the sage became his sensei. "Minato, what would you say if I told you that Konoha completely disregarded your final wish, and Sarutobi not only encouraged it, but was downright responsible for it?" Minato looked surprised yet skeptical. "I'd say tell me more." Down under Konoha, Subsonic's group and Kurene's students were walking down a hidden hallway. There didn't seem to be any alarms or traps going off, and that made few uncomfortable. Why would there be something like this here but no defense to it? Is this an escape tunnel or something? It's the hiding area of someone trying to turn Konoha into their puppet. There were defenses, but we worked during the finals to disarm them. One of Subsonic's aides answered. This one was bass, and their voice was clearly male. "Could we see who you four really are? So we could feel safer around you?" Fu asked, one of her childhood defense mechanisms flaring up right then. She couldn't trust someone she didn't know the face of. "I'm afraid not." Subsonic answered for them. "My identity has been compressed. I can't stay in Konoha any longer, so they will have to work in my place. So they need to remain masked, even here." Fu didn't like it, but she knew better than to argue against Subsonic. The woman had been very helpful to her when she was younger and trying to adjust to the differences between Oto and Taki. The last thing Fu ever wanted to do was displease those she was grateful to. "What's at the end here?" Sasami asked. "A large room, and if we're lucky Danzo will be there hiding and instructing his servants in what to do. He could be hiding elsewhere, but that room's the best place for him to correspond with his private army." The masked one called Tenor answered, their voice female. "If he's not, we'll be at the heart of his organization and can still cripple the cripple." Sharp added, laughing at their own joke, their voice male. "If the guy wasn't a warmongering threat to us all, I'd say that was uncalled for." Flat, another female, told Sharp. Suddenly there was a barrage of Senbon shooting at them from all sides. Above, below, left, and right. It was like something out of an Indiana Jones movie where he stepped on a trigger to a temple track. Fu immediately shrank to avoid being hit, and Sasami and Haku jumped backwards to escape the target zone. Subsonic and her helpers however moved like a well-trained unit to deflect the multiple needles from all directions so none would hit them. "Impressive," Haku said, seeing them move. "It's like they've been preparing for specifically this for a long time." "I think they have," Sasami commented. "As spies, they must always be ready to defend themselves if caught." The attack stopped quickly and no one looked hurt. Even so, the masked ninja made sure to check for any injuries just in case. Seeing none, they considered themselves in the clear. Fear returned to normal size and they continued down the corridor. Minato, having heard the story from Jiraiya, turned to Sarutobi with a murderous gaze. "What the hell were you thinking, Sarutobi?" The old man glared back at the revived Hokage. "I don't have to justify myself to the dead." "Does he look dead?" Orochimaru asked. "I know this jutsu. Tobirama-sensei created it. You temporarily bring the dead back to life by killing someone else first as a sort of sacrifice, and then you control the resurrected person like a puppet, but they fight with the skills they had in life." Orochimaru smiled. "Very good, Sarutobi-sensei, but you're not entirely accurate. You said temporarily, but we didn't. What are you trying to say? You can't mean you made the jutsu permanent." Sarutobi said in denial with a bit of fear. Everyone except Minato smiled. "Oh, but we do, old man. Minato Namikaze is completely resurrected thanks to us." How is that possible?" Sarutobi fearfully asked, knowing if Minato chose to fight no one in Konoha could stop him. "That's none of your business, old man. Now, before Minato kills you for your crimes against his son, the son he wanted Konoha to see as a hero for keeping the Kyuubi at bay, tell him exactly why you decided it was better to turn Konoha against him." Inma returned to his normal form. "I'm sorry, Hiruzen, but there's nothing I can do to help you out of this one. I'll go tell your kin of the true Desh." He stopped when a sword pierced his backside, the end sticking out through his breastplate. "Oh no, you don't, Fleabag. No support for the bastard who wanted my son to be Konoha's punching bag," Kushina said as she withdrew her sword from the monkey summons. "Enma!" Sarutobi screamed, already knowing it was too late to help his partner. Kushina's sword was one of the famous Uzumaki blades, forged with seals inscribed in the metal as it was manufactured, allowing the blade upon completion to have abilities unlike any other blade in the elemental nations. Rumor has it that the swords of Kiri's 7 swordsmen originated from Uzushio, given to the village in an effort to arrange peace between the villages. Kushina, being one of the Uzumakis, inherited one of the swords not given to Kiri. Kushina's sword was a pitch-black blade named Kurikai, and boy was it deadly. So deadly she only ever used it as a last resort. Whenever it cut living flesh, it emitted a chakra that attacked the target on a cellular level. What it did was destroy the bonds between cells that kept the body solid, thus turning them into liquid. In short, whatever body part it cut melted. The damage worked fast, but it rarely spread beyond the cut, and when the wound was located where Inma's was, that was not necessary. Right now his skin, muscles, left lung, and the side of his heart were starting to become blood-colored ooze. Inma fell to his knees and clutched his frontal wound, already feeling his liquidy insides leak out. He looked up at his summoner fearfully as the hole in his heart pumped out a lot of blood, and then he collapsed, disappearing in a puff of smoke to at least die in his own home. Sarutobi closed his eyes briefly in mourning. "Thank you for your help, old friend. Rest in peace." He then looked back at his assailants. "Even if you kill me, you will never escape Konoha's wrath." "Oh, we know that. But we're fully prepared for it. And we won't be alone when they try." Orochimaru grinned. "Oto has allies after all. Allies Konoha will struggle against." Kazekage pointed out. "Face it, sensei, you lost in your little scheme," Tsunade told him. "And you still haven't answered my question," Minato reminded. "Why did you set out to turn Konoha against my son?" On some level of Sarutobi's mind, he had finally accepted that this was going to be his last stand. With nothing to lose, he got angry and fearless. "It was because I finally had a chance to accomplish my dream of having a personal Jinhiriki subordinate. I tried my hardest to get Kushina under my control during my reign, but her Dem clan kept interfering. I thought assigning Tsunade to be her sensei would give me a good opportunity, but Tsunade foolishly only made it even harder. It was only after I arranged for her Boitoi to be killed that she finally left Kushina alone, but Nu, you had to be romantically involved with my weapon." Tsunade tightened her fist at hearing him mention how he caused Dan to die just to make her emotionally compromised. She already knew about this from the files Jiraiya stole, so she didn't shout about it now. "After that I called it quits for my goal and gave you my mantle in hopes you would use her the way I intended to. But you didn't, and I always thought you were an idiot for that. So when I regained the Hokage role and found out Kyuubi had been placed in a new vessel with no one around to claim jurisdiction over it, I knew my chance had finally come. I just needed to keep Tsunade and Jiraiya away from him and keep Konoha from knowing you sired him. So I lied to them both, had Orochimaru do the actual work of keeping Naruto alive, and made sure no one in Konoha would reveal anything about him by making sure they were too scared to try. It was surprisingly easy, though I had Fugaku Uchiha cast a genjutsu over all of Konoha to ensure not one person who didn't already know who he was would see a resemblance to you in your own son and think he was related to you. So Mikoto was right, there was a genjutsu involved. Kushina thought. She was out of the village after I went missing looking for me, and Orochimaru-sama was out trying to find Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama, so that's why they weren't affected by it. I wonder how she'll feel to know her own husband was the one to cast it. So why lie about IWA? Or let people know about Naruto as a Jinchuriki? Jiraiya asked. If you really wanted him to be a puppet ninja for you, wouldn't it have been easier to just hide him from everyone yourself and fill his head with whatever you wanted? I already raised and trained 2 kids while being Hokage at the same time, I really wasn't in the mood to do it again. Something had to give, and if I gave up the Hokage role I would lose my chance at molding Minato's son into my image. But if he was accepted and loved by the village, he would get too powerful to be controlled by one person. That one person being you? Minato asked. Yes, my plan required me to be the highest authority figure in his life, but if he was liked then all clan heads and many civilians would have influence over him and his loyalty would be compromisable. The solution therefore was to ensure they had no interest in him, and telling everyone he was a Jinchuriki and had no important parents did just that. The IWA thing was just to silence those that wanted to say otherwise on keeping Naruto's heritage hidden. The key aimed at the old man was literally suffocating, but it was clear the ones generating the majority of it were Kushina and Minato. The old man they had once trusted not only their lives, but their son's life as well too, had betrayed their trust, all for the sake of having a Jinchuriki at his beck and call and his call alone. He was like Danzu but with a dream of one root rather than a platoon's worth. Here Minato, you might need this. Jiraiya said as he handed his student a Trikunao. Sarutobi was the only one surprised. What? You thought all of them were lost with Minato? I've had one on me this whole time as a memento. The sage told his old mentor. Sarutobi sighed in resignation. You want to kill me? Fine, go ahead, but Konoha's will of fire will not die with me. The people of this village will rise up and withstand your bloodshed, and they will retaliate against your new village eventually. You will not escape justice forever. We are justice. The Sunin said in unison. No, you are vengeance. Their old sensei reprimanded. Potato, Potatu. Orochimaru replied. So who's going to kill him? Minato asked. We decided to let you and Kushina do that. Naruto can participate too if he wants. Tsunade answered. Nah, I'm sure Okasan wants this too much for me to take it from her. The young Jinchuriki stated. Ready Minato? Kushina asked. The Yondaime looked right at the Sandaime, hand gripping his signature weapon tightly. Yes, let's do this. Naruto smiled and used his Tetsuton to remove the metal bars holding Sarutobi prisoner. It wouldn't be any fun for them if you couldn't fight back. If I'm going down I'm taking you all with me. Sarutobi said, readying himself for one last jutsu. Minato recognized the complicated pattern of hand signs quickly. It was for summoning the Shinigami, which was only ever done for sealing souls away. Not having any time to ask himself anything, Minato quickly threw his Trikunao at his predecessor. Chance seemed to be on Minato's side as the weapon hit Sarutobi's hands, piercing both and pinning them together, stopping his jutsu and preventing him from doing anything more. The old man winced from the pain and struggled very briefly to separate his hands. Bullet in the seals for the Hiraishin kicked in and Minato was in his face. The Yondaime punched the Sandaime square in the jaw and followed with a sweep kick to throw him completely off balance. Sarutobi fell backwards and landed on his back, and Kushina appeared right over him before she drove her sword into his eyes, causing cuts on his brain and near instantaneous death for him. There, that got him. The redhead said, pleased with her work. Naruto stood back looking a bit perplexed. That, was a bit anticlimactic. I kind of expecting this fight to be, well, longer and more exciting. He was an old man worn out from fighting 3 Sunin in their primes, a cage, and a vengeful mother before this. Frankly, there wasn't a lot more he could have done at this point that wouldn't have killed himself. Orochimaru told the young man. He probably could have done a lot more resisting had we used a different approach here, but with all of us and your parents here and united, he didn't stand a chance. You are aware this will create more problems in a power vacuum, right? Minato asked. Oh, we know. We've resolved one set of problems but created another in their place. Trust us, Minato, we wouldn't have done this if we weren't prepared to handle them. Jiraiya told his student. And Suna will be there to assist Oto when the time comes. Kazekage added. That's good, but how much longer do I have? Minato asked. Probably a good 10 years, maybe more, but I wouldn't guarantee it. Orochimaru answered. What? What was done to me? Minato inquired, confused. Sorry, Minato, but we've got work to do here and we could really use your help. You don't have to kill anyone, just demoralize them. Just remember, as far as Konoha is concerned, you never had a son and Naruto was never human. Jiraiya told his resurrected student. Orochimaru went to the sound 4. The job is done. Remove the barrier. Jirobo, Kidomaru, Seikon, and Yukon, and Teiwa nodded and dispelled the barrier that had been keeping several Umbu outside. Fortunately they had seen and heard everything, so they were conflicted on what to do. Yo Yondaime-sama. One of the Umbu asked. Are they on your side? Minato asked Jiraiya, who shook his head. In that case, if you wish to live you will do nothing to stop us. But are you really going to turn against Konoha? I'm giving this village a harsh wake-up call. What happens from there is not my concern. The Hokage told them without empathy before he and the rest disappeared from sight. Should we do something? One of the Umbu nervously asked. After seeing all that, you think there's anything we can do? Danzo-sama, intruders are in the base. The old warhawk looked marginally surprised. Well, what are you waiting for? An invitation? Eliminate the enemy at once. As you wish. The Rutanin said with a bit too much mirth for Danzo's liking. Using every reflex he had, he managed to dodge a direct sword strike that would have crippled him even further. Traitor. That would only be true if I was one of your cronies to begin with. The disguised ninja said before several others arrived as backup. Whoever you are fools to try and target me. Danzo confidently claimed despite his slight fear here. You may be a powerful old man, but you're still an old man. And you can fall. Subsonic said. And you will. Tenor, the one who first tricked him, added, standing in a Kenjutsu stance. Sasami, Haku, and Fu stood back hidden as backup and to keep alert for any potential support for Danzo. Haku made it easier by freezing all known ways in and out. Danzo revealed he had 2 arms after all, his right arm covered with strange metal guards, and tried doing some hand signs. Before he could finish, a kunai was thrown at his hands and only his left hand was injured by it. He winced but did not cry out in pain. Knowing he couldn't afford to underestimate these ninja, he used his free hand to reveal his hidden Sharingan. You're going to need more than an eye to survive us. Flat declared. I didn't get where I am in life by being feeble. No one can oppose me. No one. Danzo declared. Who are you trying to convince, criminal, us or you? Subsonic said, activating her Sharingan to prevent any influence over herself. With her eyes natural and not implanted, that was going to give her an advantage over him. Doesn't matter, I've already won. Danzo said, quickly revealing his reattached arm and the Sharingan's implanted. Oh crap. Against that many Sharinans I'm not sure I'm going to be enough to keep everyone out of trouble. Even Sharp's genjutsus may have difficulty here. Subsonic thought, briefly uncertain what to do. All of her helpers made sure to look away, but that would give Danzo a slight advantage. Fu suddenly got a good idea. Cover. She took her teammates, who immediately shielded their eyes. Ninja arts include jutsu. She suddenly exhaled a thick mist made of powder that reflected all the light in the room but also provided a small amount of its own thanks to burning some of the oxygen in the room. Overall, it was a cloud that glowed as bright as the sun and burned anyone close to it. And it hung right over Danzu and all his revealed eyes. The thieving warhawk screamed as the blinding light burned the retinas of all his eyes. With all but one being active Dojutsu, it hurt even more than normal. The greatest weakness of every Dojutsu is that in order to do its job it has to become more perceptive to light and thus more vulnerable to it. Fu told herself, and she shrunk to insect size and rushed forward. He has no choice but to close those eyes and wait for them to handle light again in small doses, and if I'm lucky the pain in his arm from so many hurt eyes will hinder his ability to use the arm period. The one downside to Fu's jutsu was that Subsonic and the others were affected too, temporarily blinded with Subsonic receiving the worst of it. I can't see anything, Danzu said when he tried opening his normal eye, only to see he had gone completely blind. And my arm won't move. Yep, as expected the muscles in his right arm would not cooperate thanks to the fried optic nerves. I'm still not out yet, he said as he grabbed his cane, which was actually a cane sword, and unsheathed it, swinging it around in his left hand to keep anyone at bay. Fortunately for Fu, she was too small for him to hit. Using chakra she ran up his clothes and jumped onto his right arm. I sure hope this works, she said, pulling several paper tags with Dojutsu suppressing seals on them. All the Otonin had been given these to use on the Hyuga if confronted, or on Sasuke if he somehow happened to gain his Sharingan early. The seals had to be applied directly over the eyes and would include blindness and restriction of chakra, but only for a single minute, being right at application. More than enough time to kill them. Moving as swiftly as she could, Fu stuck one seal over each closed eye on Danzu's stiff arm and reached his wrinkled face to do the same to his Sharingan there. I would get his other two, but I've used enough time already, she thought before jumping off and regrowing. Not to full size, so she could land a quick chakra-infused kick to his sword and break it, then to full size before she actually landed. At the same time the seals regrew to normal size with her, making Danzu covered in them. The elder ninja immediately felt the strange seals on his body and could tell they were bad. I must get them off now. Get him now, Fu shouted as the powder cloud dispersed and dissipated over the floor, allowing everyone to see again. As soon as their eyes could focus, that is. Danzu heard the shout and could tell her she was. Reacting quickly, he took his broken sword and thrust it towards the green-haired girl, the broken but still sharp end cutting into her from behind. The Suna army had taken a good number of hits, as had the Oto army. The element of surprise was gone for both invaders, and now the Konoha forces were using their home field advantage to the fullest they could. Not to mention Konoha had a larger population than both Suna and Oto put together, so they were starting to use the number advantage too. On the outskirts of Konoha the wounded were taken to give them a chance to recover at the hands of Oto's top-notch medic forces trained by Tsunade herself. The dead were also taken there too, so Konoha couldn't learn from their bodies, and were to be properly identified and burned. Kin, Doso, and Zuka were in such a place, with Zuka being treated by a medic nin. Zuka was at least no longer screaming from the injury Tsum gave him. Now he was simply knocked out. He'll be fine, but his role here is over, the medic told his teammates. Thank you, Doso said. We should probably go find Kabuto-sensei and help him out, Kin told the mummy wannabe. The two went out, but as soon as they did they saw a couple of Konoha nin killing a few Oto nin that were caught off guard. Kin groaned and fired off a few senbon, her deadly accuracy hitting them all in the back of their knees, causing their legs to buckle and lose the ability to support their body weight for a moment. Dosu ran in front of them all. Melody Gauntlet internal concussion, he said before activating his weapon at point-blank range, generating sound waves that hit the inner ear so fiercely it felt like the brain itself was rattling inside the ninjas' skulls. Whatever balance those Konoha nin had left evaporated and was replaced by a migraine at full force. Kin was going to come up and finish them off, but a giant shuriken came too close to cleaving her for her liking. Turning around she saw reinforcements from Konoha, most of them Umbu, but two of them were the guards Izumo and Katetsu. And right now Konoha's troops looked like they forgot the definition of mercy. Let's get out of here, Kin told Doso, starting to panic. Doso nodded and ran with her back to the medic tent. A few Oto and Suna nin tried to fight back but were being slaughtered. Retreat, Asuna Umbu shouted before his head was cut off. Konoha's found us. Take the injured and run. Kin told anyone who could hear her. Right away the medics grabbed their supplies and patients and ran off, knowing their job was to heal not fight. Dosu grabbed Zuko and placed him on his back. Not having the upper body strength to do the same, Kin resorted to being part of the guard of the group so that they had some protection from Konoha. Kin immediately resorted to one of her best defenses. Hitting a button on her belt, a hidden device emitted a high-pitched sound that briefly disorientated the enemy, but its real purpose was to cast a genjutsu on them when she added her chakra to it, which she did. As a result, like her hypnotic bells, she made the enemy see multiple copies of the Otosuna group, and thanks to the earlier disorientation they couldn't immediately tell which group was the real one. By the time the Konoha-nin recovered, the fleeing medics had already gotten away. Gaara and Shukaku were still crushing the Konoha ninja in their area, the Baijuyu enjoying the thrill of the kill and Gaara getting a small amount of satisfaction too. With the original Inoshikajo force pulled back, there was nothing to stop the Baijuyu from getting to Konoha itself. The border patrol was trying its damnedest to keep the giant Tanuki away, but they weren't anywhere fit to subdue a Baijuyu. Not even Minato's old bodyguards Genma Shiranui, Rado Namayoshi, and their teammate, could handle this the same way Minato could have. We may be screwed. Genma commented. Try to be positive. This thing was defeated before, it can be defeated again. Rado told him. But how? Shukaku inhaled a great amount of air, making its stomach swell. Drilling air bullet. He then hit his stomach, sending the air missile out, forcing the border patrol to dodge. The wall and everything behind it weren't as lucky, and the attack caused a straight line of wreckage that practically cut Konoha itself in half. The Kaze cage arrived on top Shukaku's head beside Gaara. Nice job, son. Thanks, Otosama. Did you get revenge for us? He nodded. Yep, now all's that left to do is finish this invasion. Underground in Danzu's lair, the tremor from Shukaku's attack could be felt. The vibrations shook the walls, cracked some of Haku's ice walls, and made everyone lose their balance and fall down. In the process, Danzu's broken cane sword came out of Fu's back, and Shishibai immediately started to work on healing its container. Fu glared at Danzu with unconcealed rage, his attack on her bringing back painful memories. Her time in Taki had been unpleasant, but mostly because she was as socially welcome as an insect, and pretty much given the same kind of attention. Ignored virtually all the time and only acknowledged when one decided to eliminate you, like a pesky bug. So while most of the time the residents of Taki tried to pretend she didn't exist even to her face, there had been more than a few times when someone tried to kill her. Danzu's attack on her just sparked an old memory. Flashback. It was Fu's 7th birthday, and the young girl was running away from a lone Taki nin about at night. This nin was a genin who had been sent home from the recent Chiryunin exams for failing and was in a bad mood. And once he saw Taki's Jinhiriki, he felt he finally had something to vent at. Stand still and let me kill you, you freak. He yelled as he charged at her with a sai in each hand. The few witnesses paid it no mind, figuring as long as they played ignorant nothing would happen to them. Fu was running as best she could, and after doing it ever since she could run, she was damn good at it by this point. The problem was her first choice of hiding place, Shibuki's house, wasn't an option as he was out and left it locked, and she had no time to unlock it and sneak in. Her only choice was to run until this guy lost her, then hide in her usual sleeping place, the upper branches of Taki's central tree. Unfortunately, she took a wrong turn and found herself in a dead-end alley between two stores, the exit blocked by a brick wall. Unable to walk up walls with chakra, Fu could do little except press herself against the bricks as her assailant now calmly walked up to her, taking his time as he now felt confident in his victory. Looks like you're out of luck, vermin. Any last words? He asked, twirling his sais around as an intimidation ploy. At this age Fu wasn't much for talk, but there was one thing that could make her talk. Ninja art hidden in scale powder jutsu. She exhaled a small cloud of reflective powder and caught the moonlight, and the glare immediately blinded her would-be murderer. In his blindness, Fu tried to run past him, but he must have heard her, for he thrust out one of his sais. By luck or maybe skill, he managed to stab her right in the back and into her left kidney. Fu screamed in pain and fell on her face, reaching back to pull the weapon out. Before she could, she blacked out. It was in that blackout that Fu would meet the Shishibai for the first time, and in their meeting the bloodline deal was made. Since it was moments before midnight, they only had enough time to create the body contraction Kekkei Genkai. When she awoke, she met Jiraiya and Tsunade, who had rescued and healed her, and gave her the offer to go to Oto for a time. She was more than eager to leave. End flashback. Fia had not received such an injury until now, and when she saw Danzu she remembered that horrible Takinin who wanted to kill her simply to vent off a bad mood. She also remembered the horrible feeling she had back then as a kid, the feeling of being unwanted, unloved, and helpless to do anything about it. Now she was angry, and getting angrier. She wanted to hurt Danzu the same way she wanted to hurt that man, the way she wanted to hurt many in Taki. At least here she had the opportunity, and she was going to take it. "Kome, it's time," she said to her inner demon. "You certain?" the Shishibai asked, knowing its container would not use its name except in one situation. "Yes, do it." "Alright then. Time for me to spread my wings," the Shishibai said happily. Fia was then covered in red chakra, which slowly began to take on the form of a beetle. Her eyes turned black and compound like a bug, and 6 wings popped out of her lower back. Danzo looked on in horror. "A Jinhuriki? I must subdue her and quick." He rushed to rip off the seals on his Sharinans, but countless Senbon struck each one dead center, impaling the pupils and making him scream in agony. Even his normal eye was pierced, and a few pressure points were hit to maximize pain and hinder movement. Haku smirked at her work. "Good thing he never noticed we were here." Sasami nodded as she used the headhunter jutsu to make him be trapped up to his neck in the stone floor. "Should we calm Fia-chan down now?" Haku turned to see Fia now was covered completely in blood-red chakra with a horn on her head, 6 wings, and a ribbon tail, and she was getting bigger and more like the real Shishibai. Before anyone says anything, I just want to say I prefer Shishibai over Nanabi." She also saw Subsonic and her helpers back on their feet and fighting off some Rutanin that had managed to get in the room. "Let's kill the guy first. Then handle her." Sasami nodded, and used an earth jutsu to make the ground encasing him compress his body and make it impossible for Danzu to breathe in. He groaned, rueing the fact that he couldn't escape or substitute with something. Haku had made sure to screw up his nervous system too much, and with it uncooperative, he couldn't control his chakra any more than he could his muscles. With that secure, Sasami pulled out a ninjato she had at her hip and cut Danzu's throat with it. At the same time Fia's transformation into the Shishibai was complete and the room wasn't big enough to hold the giant insect, so she ripped the ceiling apart until the sky was exposed. Some of the Rutanin attacked her but her beating wings swept them away with a strong gust of wind. The transformed Jinhuriki emerged from the ground and hovered over Konoha, who were mortified to see 2 Baijuyu attacking Konoha now. The Shishibai looked over at the Ichibai and both grinned, already tasting victory. Naruto from a distance smiled. "Looks like Fia-chan is ready to end this. Should I do my part?" Orochimaru smiled. "Yes, and we will do ours." Naruto smiled. Showtime Kurama. Like Fia, he knew only to refer to his Baijuyu by name when it was time for their special strategy. Naruto became covered in red chakra and his eyes turned red with black slits. The chakra got darker and more tails formed before a skeleton, then muscles and finally skin and fur did as he grew larger. Now the 9 tails, 7 tails, and 1 tail were emerged and visible to all of Konoha. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, and Tsunade moved to different points around Konoha and summoned the bosses, Gamabunta, Katsuyu, and Manda, who with Shukaku and Kurama formed a pentagon around Konoha and Kome flying over the center of the village. Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Jiraiya stood atop their summons, who all were already told of the invasion and saw no reason to not allow it. Heck, Gamabunta was even in favor of it after Konoha mistreated Minato's son. Kakashi and Guy, like many others, had mixed feeling once they saw the arrangement of giant animals. "Kakashi, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Guy asked. "All 3 Sunin summons, but they're not attacking our enemies. They're staring us down, as if waiting for us to strike back." Kakashi thought out loud. This doesn't make sense. Have all the Sunin turned against Konoha? It's not impossible. Guy said. How can you say that? Kakashi asked, shocked. If one Sunin turned against Konoha, who's to say the others couldn't? It's an unpleasant truth, but loyalty isn't set in stone and fighters can switch sides. And from the looks of it, I'd say they have. Kakashi didn't like the sound of that, but he couldn't deny what he saw. Sensei, if only you were here, you'd put an end to all this. Once Konoha saw that the Sunin boss summons were backing up the Baijuyu and invading army rather than opposing them, all of Konoha's battle spirit had evaporated. After a minute, white smoke bellowed out of the Hokage Tower smoke pipe. Konoha had surrendered. The invasion was over. Chapter 70 Aftermath. The invasion over, all of Konoha's forces had no choice but to drop all their weapons and hold their hands over their heads to avoid further violence. Some wouldn't, and would go down dead if not winners and thus tried continuing the battle, but Konoha as a majority had stopped fighting. At least the civilians are safe in hiding. With luck these guys will ignore them was a common thought amongst the Konoha nin. Unfortunately for them, Oto and Suna were starting to round up every inhabitant of Konoha, shinobi, or civilian. Subsonic had already informed Oto of how to get into the civilian hideouts, but only after Orochimaru promised they weren't simply going to slaughter everyone. I'm not going to slaughter Konoha's citizens. No, I've got something even better planned for them all. The Snake Sunin told his best spy, and repeated it to himself now as he saw the captives being led to the most open part of the village. The three Baijuyu and boss summons made sure no one got away, no one. Atop the Hokage Tower were the three Sunin, arms crossed and staring down at the village they had been born and raised in. It was true that each of them couldn't avoid feeling a pang of unhappiness for things having turned out this way, but they refused to let themselves feel guilty about this. Konoha had gone downhill with no signs of improvement coming from within. Konoha's population had gotten lax and assumed their Hokage councils would always know what was best for them all, so they never once questioned if that really was the case. The only solution was change from an outside force, and better them than someone else with a more selfish agenda guiding them. Shishibai had to perch on a building so the sound of their wings wouldn't drown out what was to come next, and the Oto and Sunin formed a perimeter around the gathered citizens of the Leaf. Subsonic approached the Sunin. Otokage-sama, by all accounts, every shinobi and civilian still alive is accounted for and right here before you, ready to hear what you are about to tell them. Excellent. And what of our own? Orochimaru asked. Some are being treated and regrouping after retreating, but overall close enough to act on your orders. Perfect. Now, send word to Oto. Tell them of our victory and soon return. Subsonic nodded. Yes, Otokage-sama. She then shined away, ready to use her Kawarimi trick to get to Oto in a fraction of the time. Her subordinates would stay behind in case they were still needed. Speaking of which, her aides were holding the two elders Homura and Koharu in chains under the Sunin from the side of the building, ensuring they couldn't do anything about this. The two elders were gagged to ensure they couldn't say anything either, and Kajiyaku and Sango were wrapped around them, big as pythons as an added security measure. Orochimaru looked over the amassed crowd, grinning proudly. Oh, how I've waited for this, the time to finally take Konoha off its high horse. I know full well that part of it is because of the leaders letting their egos get big, but this never would have happened if the populace hadn't been so willing to blindly follow them like drones. After all, even if they were under a genjutsu that made it impossible for them to see Naruto as Minato's son, they did see a child and still victimized him with no regards or regrets, and would have shamelessly continued to do so had I not taken him out of Konoha 10 years ago. That is unforgivable. Hello people of Konoha. For those of you that don't know me, I am Orochimaru of the legendary Sunin. With me are my teammates, Tsunade and Jiraiya. As you can tell, we did not come here to save you from this attack. No, rather, we were the brains behind it. He paused for a second to let that sink in. Yes, this invasion was our idea. Konoha's own legendary Sunin have turned against Konoha, but before any of you ask why we would do such a thing, ask yourself this first: what would motivate all three of us to hate Konoha to this degree? Ultimately, that wasn't really a different question, but the phrasing of it did have the intended result. Most of the smarter, more perceptive ninja and civilians knew this meant that the Sunin weren't doing this just for the heck of it, nor were they likely doing it under orders for someone else and being the front for it. After all, Sunin services weren't cheap, and they specifically said, hate Konoha, not attack Konoha. That indicated this was personal in some way, meaning someone in Konoha had done something to piss all three of them off enough to get 2 villages worth of ninja to attack. And that implied more, which in turn implied more questions, and overall no one, not even their smartest Nara, could figure out just what Orochimaru was getting at. The civilians were too frightened and confused to even shout out an arrogant reply here, lest they die that much sooner. Jiraiya spoke next. I can see that none of you have any idea, but some of you are starting to realize that we're not doing this because we were bored or anything like that. The truth is we were very strongly motivated to do this, and now, you're all about to find out what exactly that motivation is. But we doubt you'll truly listen to what we say. That's why we brought along a special guest, one we know you'll listen to. Tsunade added. The 3 Sannin stepped aside, and in their place walked up Minato Namikaze. Every single citizen of Konoha gasped at seeing their fallen leader back to life. Sensei? You're alive? How? And, why aren't you fighting them? Are you on their side? Kakashi thought, his legs suddenly weak and barely able to support his weight. An imposter, that's what he is, an imposter. There's no way my sensei would turn against Konoha even if he was brought back to life by someone. Hello Konoha. Yes, I am Minato Namikaze, your yondaime. And to prove I'm no impersonator. He pulled out a Trico now clear for all to see and threw it down, where it landed right by Kakashi. A bright flash of yellow light later and the yondaime was right in front of his former student. Hello Kakashi. SSS sensei? It's really you. The gray-haired Jounin stammered out, now no longer convinced this guy was a pretender. Anyone else wondering that was now starting to seriously believe this guy was who he claimed to be. Minato picked up his weapon and held it like he was tempted to cut someone with it. I heard from my wife what you've said and done to my son. You sicken me Kakashi. You deserved to lose Obito's Sharingan. He then threw his Trico now back up where he had been and Hirai it away. Now Kakashi collapsed. Sensei is disappointed in me? Why? Everything I've ever done was in memory of him. In honor to him. Wait, did he say my son? What did I do to his son? His son died 13 years ago, everyone who knew about him knows that. Back where he originally was, but now with Kushina beside him, Minato addressed the crowd again. Are you convinced I am who I say I am? I sure hope so, because I'd hate to have to kill all of you. And while some here in Konoha do deserve to die, the rest of you are mere victims of circumstance and deserve nothing worse than to be deeply shamed for your blind action and inaction. Again, no one was brave or foolish enough to call him out on this, but the collective concession was, what the hell did we do? Allow me to elaborate what exactly Konoha did that brought this day about. Minato told everyone. 13 years ago, Kyuubi attacked and my wife and I fought along Konoha's ninja to get rid of it. We succeeded, but I died and my wife ended up in a coma, with no one able to look after our poor infant son. A son born on October 10, 13 years ago, with blonde hair and blue eyes. All we asked was he was taken care of and seen as a hero. While the majority of the population was clueless as they hadn't thought of Naruto in 10 years, some of the ninja were started to realize what their resurrected leader was getting at. Apparently some powerful people chose to conspire against us at the time and ensure our wishes were anything but followed. My wife's comatose body was moved to another country to keep her away from everyone until she could be made useful by someone, and my son was set up to be made into a pawn by the Sandaime you all have been following. That's right. The Sandaime tried to ruin my son's life, and you all helped him do it. There was a collective gasp as people comprehended this. How? One civilian asked, wanting to hear the story. I'm glad you asked. But before I answer, I have a question for you all. Why on earth did none of you trust me to protect you? He paused to let that sink in and cause confusion, but spoke up before anyone could request confirmation. For those of you that either don't know the story or haven't thought about it in years, allow me to tell you where Konoha went wrong. I may be strong, but even I can't make something like the Kyuubi disappear into thin air. It had to go somewhere when it was defeated, and I took care of that by sealing it away. But the only place I could seal it away was in a seal placed on my day-old son. Yes, on my son. There were a few more gasps as the people who could remember Naruto back before he was 3 now realized the young boy had apparently not been a random insignificant orphan or someone their Hokage had no concern regarding the life of. The kids close to Naruto's age or younger were surprised that they had never heard this part of the story before and wondered why no one ever told them the Yondaime had a son. My son held up and reinforced the seal I designed, ensuring you were safe from the Kyuubi, and all I asked was that you see him as a hero for keeping you safe every day. Apparently the Sandaime had other ideas and with help from several others set up to ensure that none of you would do anything I requested. He did this by making you all afraid of my son. His advisors, who are right here underneath us, spread propaganda against my son within hours of my death, and the late head of the Uchiha clan Fugaku Uchiha used his Sharingan to cast a genjutsu on you all to ensure that none of you saw any resemblance between my son and myself. Even though you saw the same blonde hair and blue eyes I have on him, the idea he could be my son was ludicrous to all of you. Kakashi's eyes widened when he recalled the boy Kushina referred to as her son back in Wave. Wait, is it somehow possible that child she had with her was Sensei's? It couldn't be, and yet, if what he says is true, no, it can't be true. It just can't. He then realized something. Wait, that denial actually gives his claim even more credibility. Sasuke, in the crowd along with his teammates, was also surprised to hear that his father did such a thing. Part of him was proud his father was capable of manipulating people on such a scale, but at the same time he suspected this would not work out well for him. You all were under a genjutsu and couldn't see my son as mine, that I can overlook. Minato continued. But even if the boy wasn't mine, why did you all turn against him so easily and hatefully? Why did you treat him like he was the Kyuubi itself? That I can't overlook. Why do you praise my skills as near godlike if none of you have any faith in what I did at my last stand? Why do you believe I was strong enough to turn the fox into a helpless child but not strong enough to kill it? And why would any of you believe I would actually want a child to die? None of that was a genjutsu's fault, that was all you. And I demand an explanation for your myopic hatred. It's a good thing we told him everything, and now we're all about to find out what Sensei's files didn't answer. Orochimaru thought. There must be a mistake. My father would never do such a thing. Asuma shouted out. Tsunade held up a button. We thought someone might say something like that. So that's why we made sure to have recording devices while we faced him. Here, listen to this. She then pressed a button, and megaphones put in place by Otonin started to play the part she left the tape at. Tsunade's voice, calm, face it sensei, you lost in your little scheme. Minato's voice, pressing, and you still haven't answered my question. Why did you set out to turn Konoha against my son? Sarutobi's voice, angered, it was because I finally had a chance to accomplish my dream of having a personal Jinhuriki subordinate. I tried my hardest to get Kushina under my control during my reign, but her Dem clan kept interfering. I thought assigning Tsunade to be her sensei would give me a good opportunity, but Tsunade foolishly only made it even harder. It was only after I arranged for her boy toy to be killed that she finally left Kushina alone, but you had to be romantically involved with my weapon. After that I called it quits for my goal and gave you my mantle in hopes you would use her the way I intended to. But you didn't, and I always thought you were an idiot for that. So when I regained the Hokage role and found out Kyuubi had been placed in a new vessel with no one around to claim jurisdiction over it, I knew my chance had finally come. I just needed to keep Tsunade and Jiraiya away from him and keep Konoha from knowing you sired him. So I lied to them both, had Orochimaru do the actual work of keeping Naruto alive, and made sure no one in Konoha would reveal anything about him by making sure they were too scared to try. It was surprisingly easy, though I had Fugaku Uchiha cast a genjutsu over all of Konoha to ensure not one person who didn't already know who he was would see a resemblance to you in your own son and think he was related to you. Jiraiya's voice, curious, so why lie about IWA? Or let people know about Naruto as a Jinhuriki? If you really wanted him to be a puppet ninja for you, wouldn't it have been easier to just hide him from everyone yourself and fill his head with whatever you wanted? Sarutobi's voice, certain, I already raised and trained 2 kids while being Hokage at the same time, I really wasn't in the mood to do it again. Something had to give, and if I gave up the Hokage role I would lose my chance at molding Minato's son into my image. But if he was accepted and loved by the village, he would get too powerful to be controlled by one person. Minato's voice, offended, that one person being you. Sarutobi's voice, unrepentant, yes, my plan required me to be the highest authority figure in his life, but if he was liked then all clan heads and many civilians would have influence over him and his loyalty would be compromisable. The solution therefore was to ensure they had no interest in him, and telling everyone he was a Jinhiriki and had no important parents did just that. The IWA thing was just to silence those that wanted to say otherwise on keeping Naruto's heritage hidden. At hearing this confession, many people started to realize small yet revealing things that they never stopped to think about before. There had been a pregnant woman named Uzumaki who disappeared before the Kyuubi attacked, and she was close to the Yondaime. The boy they took their grief out on did have blonde hair and blue eyes like the Yondaime. It did seem awfully convenient that IWA, their supposed eternal haters, never thought to attack Konoha right after the Kyuubi attack when they were at their weakest. But it didn't make complete sense, mostly because they weren't yet ready to consider the likelihood of their trusted Hokage having a personal agenda. Ideally, Hokages were not supposed to be greedy or selfish with their power. They were supposed to be selfless and sacrificing, putting the village above all needs including their own. The problem with that is it's only an ideal portrayal of a leader. It is anything but a reality. Now are you all so certain your Sandaime was a man worth avenging or dying for? Orochimaru told the crowd. He caused this whole mess, with the support of his 3 advisors, by turning the shinobi and civilians against the Yondaime's son by convincing you all he was unimportant and something to be afraid of. One of his advisors responsible for this setup is already dead, and these 2 here are going to follow him now. Suddenly Kajiyaku and Sango bit both Homura and Koharu on their necks, poisoning them both. Their deaths would be agonizing, but quick, as they struggled in fear to get free. Ignoring this, the Snake Sunin said more. I offer you this one-time offer Konoha, do not oppose us, and we will let Konoha have the chance to redeem itself. If you oppose us, the invasion will not end here. Not until Konoha no longer qualifies as anything except a ghost town. Choose now. All you have to do is either kneel, or take up arms again within the next 60 seconds. What came next was the longest 60 seconds Konoha ever knew. Konoha did not want to fight anymore, especially since their strongest assets were now on the opposing side. And with 3 Baijiryu and 3 boss summons giving support to the enemy armies, surrender felt like the only reasonable option. The problem was Konoha was a proud village. They were the oldest hidden village. They had been on the winning side of each shinobi war. They had bloodlines and clans that were the envy of the world. They were not the type of people who just surrendered like this. But fortunately the message was clearer than crystal, surrender or slaughter, and Oto and Suna had the strength to back up the slaughter part. In a way, this was more of a test of character than a test of resolve, and that's what Oto and Suna really wanted to see here. How could this be? How could Sensei's son still be alive without me knowing it? I'm his last student and one of our best ninja, I'm automatically supposed to know these sort of things. Kakashi told himself, currently unable to cope with the fact that he had been left out of the loop. Dear Kami, I called Sensei's son a bastard child with no significance back in Wave. No wonder he hates me. Sasuke frowned, but for once at himself. Father helped turn this entire village against a Hokage's son. Why? I mean, yes, the fact that he's not an Uchiha was bound to be part of it, but I doubt he did it just because of that. Otherwise he'd turn the entire village against every non-Uchiha and make people give himself the Hokage role. Were there limits on how much influence he could cause? Now that people have heard this, I wonder how they'll regard the Uchiha from now on. Sakura looked around the crowd noticing the various expressions. So many people look unhappy here. I don't blame them, since these awful people are trying to tell us we've been acting wrong for years. Who are they to tell us what's right and wrong? Besides, we're not wrong. We're winners and winners are never wrong. Obazan says so. Kiba kept looking over the crowd for his missing mother and sister, though his father was right beside him. Where are they? I hope they weren't captured or killed by these guys. Okasan and Nasan deserve better than to become prisoners of war. Genmo looked up at Minato in disbelief. Yondaime-sama is turning against us? Surely he wouldn't do this unless he was completely certain what motivated this reaction was real. This must mean that we all mistreated his son without even realizing it. Shino was quiet, but mentally he hadn't a clue what position to take here. It would appear the leadership of Konoha was self-serving and manipulative, but this could all be a ruse to lower our guards. But to what purpose? They already have us outmatched. Why demoralize us further? There must be a hidden objective here I can't surmise with my current amount of information. Yakumo was a bit ambivalent. I know these guys did a lot of damage here, but still, it's only because of them that I managed to heal my mind. And so far it doesn't look like any of them really mean to eliminate us. I'll reserve judgment for now but remain cautious. Danzo-sama's will must be enforced. One way or another. Sai told himself, his expression blank throughout all this. Asuma was angry, resentful at this slander. My father was a great man. Everything he did was for the good of the village. If he did sabotage one child's future, it was for the greater good. These guys are just making it personal and taking it out on us. This cannot go unpunished. What's going on here? Ino questioned. Hokage-sama betrayed the Yondaime and he's back for revenge from beyond the grave? How is this possible? Why are we being involved in this? We didn't do anything, did we? How troublesome. Shikamaru thought. It appears Konoha's governing body has been doing some shady dealing without full realization of the consequences and we all have to be part of the fallout too. Chuji had lost his appetite, but now his mental clarity. If I understand all this correctly, then Sandaime-sama set out to control Yondaime-sama's son because he had some connection to the Kyuubi. And the Sunin didn't like that and took him away to keep him safe and have now come back to eliminate the threat. Now they're trying to gauge our reaction to see if we support or abhor the Sandaime's actions. For once, Guy was at a loss for words or energy. I don't understand this, but if the recording is genuine and so is Yondaime-sama, then maybe Konoha really has been heading in the wrong direction and needed this to steer us straight. At least it doesn't look like they plan to wipe us off the face of the earth. As always, Lee was acting almost exactly like his sensei, even in somber moods. What that recording for real? Is that the actual Yondaime-sama in the flesh? Did Konoha's leadership really attempt to circumvent his son's life just to take advantage of it? If so, then who's to say they didn't do more to others? Maybe Konoha needed its leaders taken out of power. Niji ignored all this, still focused more on his father's death than any trouble his village might be in. These bastards come here, attack my village, kill my clansmen, and try to make it sound like it's our own fault. I swear on Ota-san's grave I will not rest until these asses are completely destroyed. I will ensure this sound village will be fated to become completely annihilated. Tenten was quite conflicted, but kept her hands near her weapons just in case. Is this for real? Did Konoha's leaders become corrupt and manipulative? It's too crazy to think about, but not impossible. Power can corrupt anyone after all. Even so, what is the enemy's plan for us? It can't just be a lecture and choice. If you need extra incentive, maybe this will help the older generation make up their minds. Jiraiya added, then stepped aside to reveal one of Naruto's clones who stood right beside Minato. As far as Konoha was concerned, this clone was the original, and with Naruto right next to his father, undisguised with his blonde hair and whiskers prominent, the similarities were staggering. Allow me to introduce Minato's son, the one you all mistreated 10 years ago like he was anything but human. Fugaku's old genjutsu finally broke, and everyone who up until then could never believe Naruto was in any way related to the Yondaime now could see the glaringly obvious connection. And with that, several facts started to make themselves apparent bit by bit to the more perceptive citizens of Konoha, ninja, and civilian alike. Minato's son had survived the Kyuubi attack. Sarutobi had known that and lied to them about that fact. The young boy that Orochimaru had been watching over 10 years, the one they either ignored or attacked, had been Minato's son all this time. The young boy did not die in a fire the day Orochimaru left Konoha. He was still alive and standing right in front of them. The fact that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, as far as they knew, was right there while Kyuubi was on the edge of the village meant the boy really wasn't Kyuubi in human form after all. The Sunin knew all this but also knew that Konoha would never ever believe them over their leaders, unless they did something to get the leaders out of power. Ultimately, this invasion was in actuality a wake-up call for Konoha. Time's up, Konoha. What's your decision? Surrender, or more fighting? Tsunade told everyone when 60 seconds had passed. Some immediately decided to kneel and look at the ground, knowing they couldn't continue the fight. Most were hesitant, but one by one more started to, preferring to live today so they could fight tomorrow. Some were more stubborn, but as their numbers decreased, even their resolve decreased. And by the time it was down to just the most adamant, no less than 95% of Konoha were in a position of surrender. Konoha would no longer fight as a whole against Oto and Suna on this. Their only consultation? It didn't look like Oto and Suna were intending to wipe them out or enslave them, just shame them. Orochimaru smiled, taking the surrender as a whole for the village. Good. I'm glad to see Konoha hasn't become completely brain-dead in the past 13 years. But of course, we're not going to just take your word for it either. Konoha will now be under probation, under the eyes of Oto and Suna, and we'll be watching for any signs we don't like. He decided to leave out the fact that IWA was part of their alliance, mostly to allow their side to keep some secrets. And what gives you the right to have jurisdiction over us? One of the civilian council members shouted out. Might makes right, doesn't it? Isn't that the way you've been acting for the better part of the past 2 decades? Well, now someone else is going to be enforcing their own strength for once. Tsunade answered. Doesn't feel nice to be on the receiving end of such callousness for once, does it? What do you have to be afraid of? Jiraiya asked. As long as you don't try anything to piss us off, you'll be perfectly fine. Only those of you that think you can pretend none of this ever happened should be afraid. You just killed our Hokage and several of our elders, you turned traitor to your own village, and now you've stolen our yondaime from us. I'd say you've given us plenty of reason to be pissed off. Natsumi Harano shouted out, hoping they wouldn't bother wasting their energy on killing her. And Konoha has given us every reason to be pissed off at you. Orochimaru retaliated. We have given you a warning, do not anger us any further, or we will deliver retribution. You have seen our might and the ones who direct it, the question is, will you heed our warning or will you ignore it? Wait, is that what this entire invasion was really about? A warning? Shikaku asked himself. It's your move now, Konoha. I suggest you choose wisely. Tsunade told them all. Before anything more could be said, the Sunin and those accompanying them on the rooftop vanished without a trace. Soon the rest of the Oto and Suna forces disappeared too. Then the boss summons and Byakuya were gone. The invasion was over and the invaders were apparently gone. Konoha's citizens were now standing around confused and asking themselves one question. What to do now? Check the description for the links to the author.